You must go now, or you will miss the tide.
Yes. Well, farewell, my friend.
Have you considered seeking partners outside the confines of our own race?
How far outside?
But I would walk 500 miles an hour.
Might your friend be able to grant me access to their workshops?
Oh, if I know Durin, he'll do far more than that.
What do you want?
It is Elrond of Lindon, accompanied by Celebrimbor, Lord of Eregion. We seek an audience with Prince Durin.
Well, I'll ask him, but I don't think he'll be very keen. He's already got one, you see?
What? He says they've already got one. Are you sure he's got one?
Oh, yes, it's very nice.
I told them we already got one.
You needn't keep your distance.
I'm simply wondering what manner of man would so readily abandon his companions to death.
Bam! Just like that. That's all there is to it, Dustin. That's all there is to it. A winner! Just like that. We'll be right back. More Price is Right. Don't go away.
In this program, we are going to learn about pulleys. A pulley is a machine with a wheel and a rope for lifting. A pulley is a simple machine. One end of the rope is attached to an object or a load of objects to be moved. The way pulleys work is very much like a seesaw. One end of the seesaw is weighed down. When force is put on the opposite end, the weight is lifted into the air.
Does a wood sink in water?
No,
It floats. It floats.
throw her into the pool!
In a world of remakes and remasters, what was once sacred and cool has now soured and become lame. Gone are the days of Pods and Cowabunga. Now is the reign of slurp juice and dabs. Kids these days don't even know how bad they've got it. Now it's up to the best generation to rise to the occasion and make a show that dares to go where a lot of other nerdy shows have already gone quite a bit. That's right. They're going to talk about it a lot.
Hello, and welcome to the show. This is Best Gen, where nerds complain about nerdy things. It's called Best Gen. The show's called Best Gen because we all more or less happen to be from the same gen, happen to think that it's the best. We think it's it's the best gen because not because we ourselves are better, but because movies were. So, we're joined again. We're joined again by the Tolkien nerd herself, Liz, and she's got a tree ant.
This is Treebeard. He's my bestie.
Very nice Treebeard.
That is, who makes that?
Santa, because that's who gave it to me.
Got it. Okay, don't answer the question. Keep your secrets.
Yeah, I was gonna say, come on now.
Keep your secrets. I've had this since I was like 16.
That's not a Hot Toys, right? That's
I don't think Hot Toys has licenses for Lord of the Rings. I think it's probably one of the
we
other ones.
lived in New York when I got this, and my parents most likely got it from the giant Toys R Us that's in downtown New York City, in like Manhattan.
Defunct toy chain.
Yeah, which doesn't exist anymore. So there's that.
Nice.
Well, that
he's
that
probably
is pretty
a collector's
great.
item if I hadn't lost part of his head.
That's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what that would be worth. Not that I would suggest selling it.
I really should look it up. I should also look up the Aragorn that I still have unpackaged. It's like still unpackaged.
I have to say, David has some really cool. They're much more action figure level, so they're not nearly as detailed and as intense. But some really cool stuff that he picked up. Was it a thrift shop or whatever? Of a lot of really cool Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, my mother-in-law picked them up, and they may or may not have already been featured on the stream accidentally.
You know what?
By accident.
You know what I
still
miss?
haven't caught up on that episode. Anyway.
I miss Lord of the Rings Risk.
I got it right over there.
Really? Because I've been trying to find like an old copy online, and it's expensive.
I'm more of a Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit gal.
Ooh, yeah.
Because my family refuses to play it with me anymore.
I'm not surprised by that admission at all. Yeah, I get to answer questions about Tolkien. Oh, joy!
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings Risk was great because it actually made Risk more exciting.
It made Risk interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I really like regular Risk, but
I like regular Risk too. I've actually started getting into online competitive Risk. It's kind of fun. It's weird.
That was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I went down a YouTube rabbit hole, and I was randomly recommended a channel called the Kill Pete Strategy, whose channel has just blown up recently. But it's fascinating. No, Lord of the Rings Risk made it more interesting because they introduced like quests, so that the game wasn't so long. Like the game ends when the ring gets dropped off at Mount Doom, and then you just count up however many territories you had and however many quests you completed. Yeah. And it's brilliant.
I think that was a mechanic I didn't love because because I'm used to just playing out the whole thing until you world dominate.
Well, you can if you want to. You can play with different rules, but
I think we also generally just ignored that.
The game pieces were dope because you had elves and
the cave troll was awesome.
Yeah, but you had evil and good characters. Cool. Yeah, you had.
Nice.
Oh,
want me to get it? I can break it out.
So cool.
It's like right next to you, isn't it? Like your whole shelf is right there.
Yeah.
Just right. Yep. I mean, technically, that copy is ours, right?
No,
you got your own.
No, but
so there's a copy of Lord of the Rings Risk.
Parents,
So there's a copy of Lord of the Rings Risk at our parents' house that I can steal.
Yeah, you can hijack it. Yeah,
it's probably missing all of the pieces because we're the oldest of
at least the Ring of Power.
Yeah,
the ring of it came with an actual Ring of Power that you'd.
Oh yeah, and I made like a chain necklace.
Yeah, of course. It was never in the game box growing up.
I would not be surprised if anything ends up being missing from David's that he goes and pillages that one.
What?
Did anyone else have the Ring of Power chain necklace?
Yeah, but mine was made. Mine was jerry-rigged from a Lord of the Rings risk set.
Mine was bought, and then I also had like this massive keychain that I got from like Burger King.
Nice.
Awesome.
We're not
had good stuff.
Yeah,
we're not just joined by Liz.
Meals were fun.
We're also joined by my brother David, and
I'm also here.
And other Jared. Original Jared might be coming back soon. I think he's done with his evening class.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can actually be the other again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Corwin's going to make it tonight. His work schedule is flexible, as we all know. So, we have got a lot to discuss tonight. Rings of Power, episode 4, and Liz, I'm very excited because we haven't heard from you at all since
I know
since we started.
I needed to stew on it
Since we started this journey.
Yes.
I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. So you're all caught up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I'm all
I don't
caught
mind
up.
any
As long as
spoilers,
the
so, like-
last episode was the one that didn't have any harfoots in it, then yeah, I'm caught up.
Or anything else happen? Yeah, that one.
And I'm only 40 minutes into the latest episode, but I also don't mind spoilers, so feel free to talk about anything about it.
Don't worry,
Yeah,
Jared.
don't worry about that.
Nothing happened.
Well, nothing that we know so far.
Yeah, that's kind of my issue. I think we're now 4 episodes in, 4 hours in. That's one extended edition of take your pick of any of the original movies, and nothing's happened. I mean,
It's
I get
more.
that it's a TV show.
It's more. It's about half hour into
It's
the
more
2 towers. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're all an hour and 10 minutes long, so that's like an hour and 40
Well,
minutes.
I'm saying the
or
extended
4 hours.
versions are about 4 hours.
Yeah.
I don't think you've ever noticed how long they are.
You
wouldn't.
The Fellowship
That's
is about
true.
three.
Why is it so
really
short?
The Fellowship is about 3.5. So we're about half hour into the 2 towers. And
But I mean, I get it's a TV show, so it's a different form factor, right? But still, the same time has passed for one of the original extended versions of the films, and I feel like we're just barely starting to have some sort of plot.
We're definitely scraping the surface as far as like the big fat plot goes. But the one of the problems with creating the show itself is that you're working with something that takes thousands of years for everything to happen. Like the story of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are both freakishly condensed with a ton of action compared to the rest of the history of Middle Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's and just a contrast. We were talking about a little bit last week. The fact that the Game of Thrones show, the House of the Dragon, like first episode, and you're like, you get the players, you get everything else. Like it's much better set up and like presented, and you feel more action going on.
Well, what's interesting is they're kind of adapting the same kind of story. The House of the Dragon is based off Fire and Blood, right? The book, and the Fire and Blood isn't written like a regular story. It's a history book with like excerpts from 4 different maesters who have different accounts of the same story.
Okay,
and it jumps through time a bunch, which the show is doing.
And it's doing
like
it
every
better
episode.
than,
It skips like 5 years.
Yeah, well, and that's a contrast because I was noticing this time they've already started on the tower in episode 4, and I'm like, we have had no sense of progression of time in any of these episodes. But yet,
we have had progression of time because of Galadriel's story, which has been like 3 days.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
And already,
what I can't figure out is
the reason
progression of time that Galadriel's going through the same timeline as what everyone else is going
because
through.
the comet links all of the storylines together.
Well, but the comet is a
comet links
point
the
in time.
Hobbits
Maybe the rest
together.
of them.
But all of the characters saw it at the same time.
But from there, maybe the presentation has been off. Because to Liz's point, maybe it's been 3 days since the comet for Galadriel. But with Elrond and
and it's going to like skip over the time that they're in their boats.
But I hope that they connect those up, because otherwise right now we're feeling like it's happening all at the same pace.
But we've already had Elrond travel
It feels
travel between what's the town's name? I had it in my intro. Illyrian and Moria like 6 times, and you just
not Moria,
tell
it's Cause of Doom, isn't it?
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really want to spend a lot of time watching Elrond on a horse, though.
Yeah, but
At
the
least it's
fact
not
that he
slow-mo.
but he teleports back and forth, and you're like, this
Well,
is, and then it cuts to
and
Galadriel. It's been a day, you know.
It's more a matter of presentation, because you don't have to show him like riding back and forth all the time, but like finding other ways to show that there has been a passage of time. Even in, I think, the first episode, they did a lot of the like map travel,
Which was
but you can
absent.
do map travel.
I will say that was
Yeah.
probably my favorite thing of the show, which there aren't a whole lot of things that I do like, but I did like how they had the map transitions, because it kind of helped, and they stopped doing that this episode.
You're right.
It was completely absent.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still open to seeing it like as it goes along, to see how it goes. But it is kind of confusing. It's like, wait a second, what's this time thing is feeling weird to me. So like, holy cow, how much have
If
they
you've
been?
ever read the Silmarillion, or
Yeah,
like
that's something I have missed. Yeah.
certain parts in the appendices where it's not laid out year by year by year by year, he will jump back and forth, and it can get really confusing to figure out what is happening when as well, which is kind of funny. And so like for me, when I was watching it, because of the familiarity I have with sort of this timeline crunch where everything sort of flops all over the place, it didn't occur to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think about it until later. I was like, wait, why?
Thank you, Mark. I'm getting no rocks tonight.
That's a running joke we've got.
Yeah, he wants me to eat bags of rocks whenever I disagree with him.
Yep.
Oh.
Which is frequently.
As the contrarian, so the contrary, the positive of the anyway, as the contrarian of the group often.
I just really like to like things.
Yeah.
So
Are you liking the Rings of Power?
yes.
Good.
Really?
I am
Yes.
happy for you.
Okay.
I'm so happy for you.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, tell
I
us
have
why.
reasons.
Okay.
I have reasons. One of which is I think there are parts of the show that Tolkien would nerd out over. Because
It's beautiful.
not only because it's beautiful, like, of course, it's beautiful, and he would love that. He would love to see something that aesthetically pleasing, but there are references not only within the stories itself and the language that they're using, which is usually like really dead on, and the accents are really good, but also in the architecture and the clothes and the traditions that are behind a lot of what they're doing are a direct connection to where he found inspiration for these tales originally.
Nice.
Numenor, do you guys know that Numenor is Atlantis?
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So Numenor, the
Spoilers.
Liz.
I'm
so sorry, Jared.
No,
some
you're
people,
good, you're good.
some people might not know what happens to Numenor.
Well, I'm not
did-
saying what happens to
yeah.
Numenor. It's just inspired by it.
Yeah. Well, and I saw at least her vision, so
Yeah, we kind of
also
did
sort of
have
makes
the-
sense.
Oh yeah, they kind of told us
What
what happens in
happens,
this
so-
episode.
Yeah,
right?
she
And again,
gets
I don't care about
Atlantis
spoilers.
style visions of
Yeah.
it, and that's all that I'm going to say about it. But the cool thing is that when you look at the architecture and you look at cities on the coast of Greece, there's massive inspiration there, which is really, really cool. And then you have the harfoots, which I could spend like 3 hours. I could spend a really long time talking about harfoots.
Okay,
Like
I'm
a really long time.
because they are my least favorite part of the show.
They are my favorite part of the show.
They're so boring though.
I
They
liked
are
them in the
so
first
freaking
episode.
awesome.
Okay,
The last
but
episode they were in, I
They're
felt a little
so
iffier,
fun.
but
They're wild.
You mentioned their specifically their culture, which I found ridiculous. The fact that
Yes!
they just the
It
fact that they
is, and it
leave
was,
people
because it
behind.
existed.
But that's not how any nomadic culture ever acted.
Yes, it is.
Really? Really?
Yes!
If you are a nomadic
Like,
culture and you
all
are
the
actively
time.
just leaving people behind to die by bees,
No,
you are
it's
not
because
going to
they're not
survive.
intentionally leaving them behind. It's literally that they can't bring more people. And the reason this is happening is because they're too flipping small. this is the problem they're running into, and this actually goes to philology. It's okay.
Okay.
So when Tolkien wrote, and I know a lot of people think that this was cruel and it didn't make a lot of sense, but it fits into the philology of the word. So the whole purpose, all of Lord of the Rings, the reason it exists in the first place is because he was grading something, and he randomly had this thought in his head that was, in the hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, and he wrote it down in the margins.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what the word was, what it meant, and he decided to just look it up and figure it out and decide on his own what that was going to be. And if you look at the words that are similar to the word hobbit, the majority of them, you just like stick it in the dictionary and you just look it up. That's what this book is talking about. You will find like little trinkets here and there that the exact definition of who hobbits are in the first place. One of them comes from the ancient, like old English word that literally people use nowadays for hobo.
Right. Okay.
Which is they really were a nomadic people.
Yeah.
Another one was that they were just kind of wild. And to say no, they wouldn't leave anyone behind. Maybe yes, maybe no. If you look at a lot of pilgrimages, people got left behind.
Yeah, because you're traveling, you have to get somewhere. Yeah, it's a balance because you can't leave too many because then you're gonna die out.
Yeah.
But
The problem that they ran into is not that they chose not to leave people behind. It was literally that if they went back to get someone who got left behind, they will die. So like you have this family and you have the mom and the dad is usually doing all of the heavy lifting. If the dad stops and turns back for his brother's family, that means that family dies with the dad, and this new family that only has a limited amount of people to push their cart, they're going to die too. So it was a matter of survival.
Yeah, I understand that, but the show hasn't shown us any reason for them to need to move on. Does that make sense? Like
Yes,
it makes them look just really dumb.
Well, actually, they keep
especially
mentioning
since
this area because
I guess they say there's wolves, but
yeah, it's because wolves follow them. They're prey. They're literally like
rabbits.
So they have to keep, I think their thought is that we have to keep moving because if the predators know where we are, they're going to come and get us and they're going to get our home, basically. They don't have any warrior instincts to protect their home. Another thing that made me freakishly excited, and this was like deep nerd cut, is that when they have like their little celebration, there's these kids wearing like these stick hay suits.
Yeah.
In England, specifically Europe, there are ancient pagan celebrations where they flipping wear those.
Yeah.
And it's so cool looking. And it was so clever that they would add that into there. And I seriously think that Tolkien would have absolutely loved that. Another reason I like the harfoots is that Nori is Frodo's like
ancestor.
placement. But he's not the Frodo that we see in the movies. He's the Frodo. She acts like the Frodo that Gandalf talks about as a child. Where he's really inquisitive, gets into a little bit of trouble, goes sort of outside of the regular Hobbit's bubble, is way more curious. And then there's the fact that they chose an actress who flippin' looks like Elijah Wood.
Yeah. Yeah, she does. I'm kind of torn on the Hobbits too, because I was expecting to hate them. I still think that they look ridiculously stupid.
I think they look
as I said, I hate the crap that they put in their hair. It's like it looks like they put it in there intentionally, but it just looks so terrible.
It's pagan.
But
that's how pagans dressed.
Just haphazardly, just shoved everywhere.
Yeah, it was wild looking.
I'm okay with some of it, but it often goes way too far. Like specifically during their like harvest celebration, the Sadik Burrows, the leader of the group, he's wearing like the Leaning Tower of Pisa of sticks on his head, and I'm like, that looks so dumb. Like,
I don't like the way they look, but
costuming, though.
Yeah,
They had some dumb stuff.
Yeah. But like I said before, I've been surprised at how much I've liked the interactions, specifically with Nori and the Elder, the talk that they've had. I thought that was really well done. So
yeah.
Yeah.
What are the things you've been liking? Like, it is cool to see, to see like a positive, and especially from somebody who's such a Tolkien lore fan, because there's been so much. There are things that they're playing with and they're messing with, but
they are messing with stuff. They are bouncing around. One of the things that they have to do, there's a couple of things that people complain about that the creators of the show didn't really have a whole lot of a choice in the matter because of
rights. Yeah.
Rights.
Mm-hmm.
And that's frustrating, and that's something that you just have to forgive and you have to move on. The one thing that I will always struggle and overlook is I don't notice when there are plot holes most of the time because I don't look at plots.
Oh, that's where I specialize
as other people do. And so like when I'm watching it with my husband, he like zeroes in on a few things like more than I do, and I'm like, what? But I don't see. So, I'm looking at characters. I'm looking at the performance themselves, which has gotten better as the show's gotten along, which is really typical of TV shows because when they start, he's saying not all pagans dress like homeless people. They used to though. When they start out,
some of them dressed like Black Sabbath. So
well, now they do.
Now they do. Right.
Except for my friend who's pagan who just dresses really well. But they I don't even remember what I was talking about.
The acting has gotten better.
Yeah, the acting has gotten better, which is really typical of TV shows because when actors get used to each other, get used to the director, get more comfortable with communication, things get better there. Galadriel's acting has gotten better. Her voice is amazing. She has a wonderful elf voice. Not everything she does is perfect. There are flaws in her story, but there's still potential there for her to be doing some really cool crap.
Yeah. Where I've mostly gotten hung up myself has been some of those story points. I'm not big on the plot holes per se, but as we've like talked in, I was like, why is this? And this doesn't feel like it will end up working or making sense. But a lot of the look of it has been really good. I agree with you there. Some of the characterization I've been curious about, but that's cool.
So Liz, I don't know if you know this about myself, but I do improv comedy. And specifically, I've done it for over a decade, coming up on 15 years now. But what I'm currently doing and what I've been doing for a while is improvised musicals. Like a full, like a 45 minutes
like
to
Wayne Brady.
45 minutes to an no, like a musical, not just a song. Like 45 minutes to an hour of like a one-act play.
Oh gosh.
And so I've been doing it for so long that I know how stories work and I know how good and how to do it well and how to do it poorly. So like picking up on plot holes isn't something I even look for. It just, they jump out and be like, oh, like, but why would, so
it sticks in your brain.
That has made this show very difficult. But like I do agree, Elliot. What are you doing?
Mark,
it's your bedtime.
Mark's gonna get slapped if he dubs. All right, Galadriel's acting is getting better, Mark.
I still cannot stand her.
I think we know where the bag of rocks is going this week for him, though.
I think she looks the part of Galadriel. I haven't gotten Galadriel from her yet. I don't know. I do agree. It's gotten a little bit better.
I haven't gotten third age Galadriel from her.
Exactly.
I have younger, wild Galadriel for sure.
There was a line in this episode that really stuck out to me, which is the entire problem with her character in the show. It's her talking to Sauron, Hallbrand, when they're in jail. And he's trying to give her advice. He keeps giving her good advice, and she keeps not listening.
Yeah. But that's kind of what elves do. They don't like advice from.
But that's not what Galadriel's do. The line. Okay, the line in particular is it's something on the lines of like, oh, are you presuming to lecture me on the art of war or something like that, right? And he's like, so like the Queen's Court is not the battlefield that you would excel in. The real battlefield is where you're good at, and that's literally the opposite of her character. She was a diplomat. She always has been. So the Queen's Court is where she should be excelling, but she's so.
This version of Galadriel is a warrior.
Yes, it's a version that I don't like.
I saw that line as more of
it's different.
The way that I see it is this is not the Galadriel that I know. This is a different Galadriel. This is different interpretation. And what I'm understanding is that she's very slowly learning how to become a diplomat.
Has she learned anything?
Has she learned anything?
Because she's constantly being proven
right. Not in the
she's
show
constantly
yet,
being proven right. So even though she's abrasive and offensive and won't listen to anybody, I don't think she's ever going to learn a lesson because she's being proven right constantly.
Sometimes. I mean, she's constantly getting herself in jail, so
yeah.
But again, the fact that she's sure Sauron's out there and Sauron is out there, her being proven, she will end up being proven right about that. So it's going to be hard to, because she's been very like arrogant about that and very like single-minded on that, which is part of where her problem has been and what would need to change for her to go from where she is to where we see her in the Lord of the Rings as a better diplomat, as a better able to kind of deal with people. So it's like, how is she going to make that journey if the thing that she's very arrogant and single-minded on, she's just going to end up being proven right. So where will she end up feeling the need to grow and to change?
Right.
Maybe they'll find something to do for that, and I'm open to seeing that. But so far, I'm curious as to how that's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's also frustrating because for more or less, she's the main character of the show, right? Like we've spent the most time with her. There are a lot of main characters, right? But she's basically the face of the show, and she's just not likable.
I disagree.
Yeah,
I'm not. I feel like she's not likable, but she's not supposed to be likable. Currently, is how I'm feeling about it. You know,
I think her biggest flaw is that right now is that people around her dislike her, and she doesn't know what to do about it.
It would help if she's not.
She's giving them reasons.
She's definitely
like
giving
all,
them reasons.
All of her lines, she just delivers in like spite and anger. I'm like, just.
Oh, the when she's rescued by Elendil, who I've really liked Elendil's performance. I think he's doing a great job. But she's rescued from the sea by Elendil and given food and rest, and she pops up from the hold and starts yelling at him.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like,
thing to do though.
What? Like, no. Show some diplomacy. Come on.
What's funny?
He would very well be in his rights to throw her back in the sea.
Oh yeah, he totally could.
And I wish that he did.
Actually, that would have been really funny, humbling experience for her. That would have been.
And then it would have been great and then she would have learned a little bit of humility, and I would have liked her more.
It also says something about Elendil's personality, though, which is kind of fun. That like he just rescued a person who's screaming at him, and he's like, "All right, just cool off." I don't care. Although I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know, just as anybody who has been in any sort of rescuing, like, caretaking situation has been yelled at by someone they've saved. So it's
It doesn't excuse her
what's funny
behavior.
is that while I like the show and while Galadriel is supposed to be the main character, she's my least favorite part of the show.
Okay.
I would much rather see what our new elf is doing, Erondir. I would much rather see what the harfoots are doing, because I just think there's a lot of potential for like a really immersive experience with them. And I am obsessed with finding out if what's his face is Saruman or Gandalf. It's most likely Gandalf, because it's trying to explain the reason why he's always been so obsessed with hobbits.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting if it was Saruman.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, I think the
plot twist.
I think it would be smart to do a plot twist like that, but I don't think that the showrunners are that smart. And I think it's just going to be Gandalf.
Well, if it wasn't though, why wouldn't they just say, "Oh, what's your name?" It's Gandalf, or let's call you Gandalf. Why are they stringing 4 episodes in and we don't have a name for this mysterious?
Because he had his mind erased. That's one of the actually lore accurate things that the show has depicted, even though he shouldn't exist right now. He doesn't show up till the Third Age.
And even
when they did show up, their memories of heaven or whatever was erased.
Even having one of them give him, "Oh, we'll call you Gandalf." There, to me, I think that would have actually come across like a Han Solo. I would not have wanted that.
Yeah,
that's way too.
I think that is how it happens, though. For real, doesn't someone give him the name Galadriel or Gandalf? I'm pretty sure the name Gandalf is given to him because his original name is different.
But Gandalf is his common tongue name.
Yeah.
But again, to me, it's less about the fact that somebody just gives it to him and more about like the way, because it's just like the Solo was some random person who just barely met him who's just going to call him that because it's funny. If the Harfoots had decided, "Oh, we're going to call you Gandalf because we think you're grand like an elf," whatever they wanted to come up with for their random excuse would be weird. But once they get to know him and as they grow along, if they come up with "You need a name, let's figure something out," and then that would be way better than they're like, "We'll call you Gandalf." I don't know. That's why I'm fine with them taking their time for it rather than trying to be like immediately do it, because I don't think that would work for me. That's why just specifically addressing your suggestion of like, why don't they just do it right now? If
that's a good point.
That's true, because it could be really cheap potentially to do it that way.
I think Jacob Ironside makes a good point in going back to Galadriel, because a lot of the excuses I've heard for her character is that, she's still young and she's yearning, but she's 3,500 years old.
Hey, you never reveal a woman's age. Come on now.
Okay.
Yeah, seriously.
Like
rude.
She should already be mature at this point.
Well, in a world that is more expansive, she should already be mature. But in a world where she spent thousands of years living in like peaceful nothingness, basically,
how do you
have to give a little bit of leeway? There's not a lot of learning.
I think how do you point to the balance between? Sorry, let me just toss in the idea that like maybe she's not as mature as we expect her to be or we're used to her being. But I think you could have her be arrogant in a way that doesn't feel immature. Because I think that sometimes for me, it comes across really immature, arrogant. Whereas she could come across more. Honestly, I haven't loved Elrond, but like I feel like his arrogance is a much more like I am a mature, 3,000-year-old like, but he's still arrogant and he's still making mistakes. Whereas she is just a much more petulant that really comes across in a confrontational way that doesn't feel like she's 3,000 years old, even though a lot of that was spent in a peaceful time and with nothing going on.
She's supposed to be a diplomat. I don't. Hey, Elliot,
it's
your
not
bedtime.
a diplomat in this story.
Close the door. Close the door. Close the door.
I suppose partially to your point, and kind of what Mark's getting at here is the idea that like, even though she's not a diplomat now in this story, if we're looking at it from the perspective of Tolkien's stories, most of the time that we see her is even in the future, into the Third Age, where she has become a diplomat. And if we're pretending that this is some previous point in her life, never in Tolkien's stuff does it reference her being, at least my understanding, I haven't actually read a lot of it, her being particularly warrior-minded, or especially not this
In the
degree of a
Silmarillion,
warrior.
she is.
So it sounds like she did a little bit of taking up the sword, but there's a difference between like being primarily a warrior versus. So I don't know. Again, I'll defer to your knowledge as the Tolkien expert, but that's my understanding of what I've heard.
Yeah,
So she did do a lot of fighting and commanding of soldiers.
She did fighting.
Yeah,
she wasn't.
She did a
she
lot of
wasn't a
fighting
commander.
before and after she got married. And then after she got married.
Speaking of her marriage, where's Celeborn? Is it Celeborn or Celeborn?
Depending on what country you live in, I guess.
Okay, I'm upset about that.
I'm one of those.
She got married in the first
stage.
age.
Doesn't know how to pronounce them because I've only read them.
Yeah.
Peter is how I used to say pedigree.
Celeborn because Tolkien liked a soft C. And yeah, so at this point, she's supposed to be married to Celeborn. Celebrant should be an adult by now. Her daughter.
Yeah.
Because they get married in the first age.
Yeah.
But this is the second age, and I don't think she even knows him yet.
No, they want her to have a romance with Halbrand first.
Maybe.
No,
I don't know.
They've said it.
I know a lot of people say that it's like super obvious and that it's going to happen.
No, the actor just gave an interview where he talked about that he's her love interest.
Yeah.
I get that feeling from the way they're setting up the story too. But
yeah.
But like Tolkien was not super into love stories in general. There's not a lot of them in detail. The most detailed love story is
very romanticized.
Or Eowyn and Faramir is actually the most detailed love story outside of Luthien and Beren.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that to me, it's one of those things where I can accept that as a part of the adaptation, that it's like, hey, we want to make an interesting show. And it does bug me that it's so far off the mark. If this was in the first age, where maybe she should have already been married to Celeborn like 100 years ago or whatever, but we want to play around with that. But this is like thousands of years after she should have already been there. So it's like, you're playing with it more than I'd like, but I can recognize that it's partially like you have limited ability that you can display because of what you have the rights for. And you want to make an interesting story.
Well,
I don't love it, but I can accept it.
You need to put it in a specific timeline, and you have to just condense things.
Yeah.
There's also parts of it where you have to make decisions that Tolkien did not make. One of them is he deeply regretted mentioning in Lord of the Rings where the origin of the orcs originally came from. After he wrote the book, in the books, he's talking about how they were elves once, and they were what's the word?
Corrupted.
Corrupted. Yeah, that's the word. They were corrupted, and then later on in his writings, later in his life, he wished that he hadn't have done that. He felt like it messed with the dichotomy of good versus evil. He felt like there should have, if that was the case, they should have had some sort of redemption. Chance instead of just withering away into these evil creatures. And so the creators of the show had to make that decision for him. They also had to make decisions about Queen Marielle because there's a lot of fogginess surrounding what she did as regent.
But why did they choose the one female queen of Numenor that never actually served as queen?
Because
she was usurped immediately. Like she never actually
in the story of the Rings of Power.
I know, but they could have chosen any of the other queens of Numenor who actually served as queens.
Because she was the one who was there when it was happening.
So actually, here's something that might make a difference to you, Alan, because they make a bit of a clarification in here that she is not the queen.
No,
she is just a regent. She is not actually the queen. So it actually may not be as, because you were saying like she's the only one that's not actually a queen. There's plenty of queens. Why are they making her queen? They didn't actually make her queen. They are. It sounds like, and again, they clarified it a little bit better this episode that she's not the queen. She's just the regent. And so maybe it will actually fit into the story. To your point,
weren't ruling on their own. They had husbands who were kings who worked with them. Muriel was the only one who was alone as a female ruler, acting in her father's place in Numenor.
She gets married, and her husband takes up the throne. In the original,
yeah.
But so it sounds like they may not actually. It seemed like they were departing from it. But maybe they're not actually departing from that because the distinction between her being regent versus queen.
Yes and no, but a lot of it is filling in the gaps because there's a lot of gaps surrounding Muriel.
Yeah.
Another thing about Muriel, and I'm going to turn into the girly costume person. Her freaking costume.
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks good.
Hers is one of the only ones that I like.
But
I love her costume.
But we've already seen pictures of her costume change into armor, and it's not good.
I haven't seen it.
It's pretty sad.
She's wearing a spandex print of scale mail.
Fun.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really and she's the one with the spiky helmet that's completely ridiculous. Have you seen that poster?
But her blue costume there.
I do like her blue costume. It looks very good.
I love her blue costume. I freaking love the scales. I think that was really clever. And it's really cute how probably the most, and I read it in a few articles, like a couple of other Tolkien nerds have talked about it. The most Tolkien thing in the show that happens in the show was never written by Tolkien, and it's an elf crying because he has to cut down a tree.
I didn't like that part.
We talked about that last episode.
Tolkien thing that could possibly happen. Tolkien and his freaking tree obsession.
I understand.
One of these guys' buddies.
I understand that, but the problem with that scene, we talked about this last episode, is that they formulated a plan to escape, and they said we need to find some excuse to get up on top of there
so we can
scout out the area. And then the orc immediately says, hey,
gives them a reason
and cut down that tree. And it says, no, I won't cut that tree because of religious reasons or whatever.
They give them an excuse to be able to go and see the tree line.
The other aspect of that also kind of really makes it ring for me is the fact that this is in no way the first tree they have come across.
Yeah.
So they've probably been cutting down trees, or maybe the orcs have been cutting down trees until then. Why did they decide to then switch suddenly from we'll cut down the trees to suddenly saying, oh, this tree's in the way, you guys better go cut it down? Why did they decide this one moment to suddenly make the elves go cut down the trees that the elves then had to say,
well, they haven't been there,
which again was very
probably just making them move rocks and dig through the mud. And it's funny because it's such a freaking spoiled elf thing to be like, I have a plan and it's going to be great. And they're like, here's a really easy way to do a plan. And they're like, ew, not like that.
And I do like that for their, because they're elves
or whatever, the rest of things going on at the time.
Because their elven trees are sacred.
Yeah, but within that context, it didn't make any sense.
But in the context, it kind of felt weird.
And that's my main problem with the film. I love, as always, the CGI with the sets and everything are amazing. All of the scenery is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like Tolkien. It's great. It's fantastic. I love it. The costuming is half and half. Some of them are really terrible, and some of them are really good.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's where everything comes together. It's the writing, it's the dialogue. There's some dialogue just like.
And the dialogue I haven't hated as much. It's kind of odd, but
here's an example.
I have some examples too.
The opening. I think it's the opening scene from the show. Well, after the Queen sees Numenor get sunk, right? It cuts to Pharazôn, who's obviously trying to work against Muriel and take over,
which is very, very accurate to the story.
Yes, that is accurate. And he's with his son Kemen, I believe. And we talked about this last episode as well. The dialogue is written so poorly that these characters are talking past each other and not actually they're not actually.
All the dialogue is dead on.
they're not
Some
actually
of it is really
responding. They're not
Some of
actually
it is good.
responding to what each other are saying. They have lines that just make no sense.
Right. The actors aren't used to each other.
But it's the writing too. It's not just the actors.
Yeah.
So
It's a little
Kemen walks through the crowd and he's shouting, "Chancellor, Chancellor," and then Farazan responds, "Keep your voice down. People can't know I'm the Chancellor." And then 1 second later, a merchant says, "Hey, Chancellor, I've got your fish."
Yeah.
In the same, like, also, he's wearing his Chancellor outfit.
Well, and isn't that also the like scene where he's also like doing a lot of shaking hands, and he tells him like, "Oh yeah, being in public service is going to be a lot of like."
Why did
shaking
he
hands
tell
and
his
kicking-
son to keep his voice down? It makes no sense. And then
Probably
when he's
because they forgot to
chastised,
edit it out.
his son's response is, "I was only trying to be clever." Like none of it makes sense.
Yeah. Another example is when Isildur is cast off from the dismissed from the boat,
and they fire
thing,
his
right?
crew.
They fire
He
his
could
crew,
not
whatever.
have fired his
But
friends. That was messed up.
Yes, but so the thing is, he's already.
Getting rid of Isildur totally makes sense. Like screwing over his friends, that was not okay.
Yes, I agree. But as far as the dialogue goes, Isildur's already proved that he's capable at sea, right? They had that whole scene, I think it was in the previous episode, where that other guy lets go of the rope and he knew it was going to happen. He said, "No, don't let go of that rope," whatever. And he saves him and he pulls him in, right? He's proved that he's competent. And the shipmaster or whatever tells him so much. He says, "Hey, you've had experience with this. You did this on purpose," right?
Mm-hmm.
So then when they're fired, their friends are hanging out, and then his friend gets mad at him and he says, "What have you done to earn it? What have you done to earn your spot on the ship?" It's like
they were implying that he got it because of nepotism, because of his father. But
so he's like,
but he was also better than all of them.
Exactly. So it's like, well, that line
That's
didn't
also
make
just
any
what
sense.
people say when they're being mean, though.
Yeah,
yeah,
but it's possible he started out from a nepotistic point of view, but then has actually been able to do well. But
right,
yeah,
so but
it
again,
did seem
that
weird.
line wouldn't
That's
make
a good
sense.
I do like the actors for Isildur and his sister. I thought they were well cast.
His sister's nice and his father's nice.
I don't like.
I think he looks a little bit
like
too
Isildur.
baby faced.
Isildur is a baby, though.
He is a big
Yeah.
baby. That's
He's a baby.
So
I
And also,
really-
where's his? I really want to know where his brother is because things happen and his brother's supposed to be there. And I know his brother's
they
not
did
dead.
mention him, but
They mention him, but they talk about him like he might be dead. But I think he just might be in Middle Earth and not
gone.
in
I
New
think he's
York.
off. Yeah, because there was something that like he said about his brother told him that their dad had deferred. That was the previous episode, and then this episode, one of his friends was like, "Oh, this is your brother's stuff all over again." You know, when he kicks the chamber pot away from the other guy, he wanted to throw up.
And again, this is things that we don't have any context for, so we're not really invested in the outcome. This is the same thing that happened last was it last episode or 2 episodes ago, where the conversation between him and his father, and his sister was there for a bit, and he's like scolding him about not wanting to go because of his brother and this and this and that, and like we don't know any context for this conversation. This doesn't have any weight or meaning to us. We're not invested in it.
Also,
it is. Yeah.
I think it's nothing against the actress. I think she's doing a good job as Isildur's sister. I do not care about her going to college. Why is that a storyline?
I'm curious to see where they're going to go.
Why do we care about this? It's so inconsequential.
Well, I think they're just trying to create a family dynamic, and it's getting a little clumsy.
It's very
but I am curious to see what's going to happen with her because I feel like she is going to have some significance. We just need to see.
Pull up Jacob Ironside's comment.
See what it is.
The one thing, this newest one.
So
one thing about the elves not wanting to cut down the tree and crying.
But they carve elf images into the trees.
They're wearing wooden armor. Yeah,
that's true.
Doesn't it talk about in the books though that they sing those out of the trees?
I don't know.
I thought that they talked about that, so they could sing things out of the trees and probably sing the shape into the trees. I
sounds like the
Wheel of Time. Some other Well, I haven't read Wheel of Time, so it wouldn't be that, but it could be some other random fantasy that I've read that had something to do with elves singing things out of trees.
So going back to dialogue, though, one of the worst instances is in this episode when Elrond is with Disa and is suspecting that she's lying, and her line is, calling a dwarf dishonest in her own home is a recipe for strong gravy.
I know, I wrote that down too.
The strong gravy was the part that confused me.
Like
the implication
it started off fine, but
the implication is that they will like pound that person into gravy, but it's so dumb.
I don't know. It's just like it's like they were trying to write something profound, but it's just
that.
I don't know. I laughed at that.
Well,
one.
that one felt on par with
dumb.
if you don't do it, I'll make a map of your back. But you guys seem to like that line.
I liked that one. I actually liked that one.
Yeah, I do like that line. I like Disa in general. I wish that her sideburns were more prominent. She does have them.
Yeah. They're peach fuzz sideburns.
Even knowing that you're supposed to be looking for them, I have completely missed them the entire time.
I've only there's
looked,
one shot where the light gleans off and you see, oh, there is a little peach fuzz
you
there.
can see it.
Jared, that's because my TV beats you by 5 inches.
That's what it is.
So you gotta have a big screen.
My
TV. You have a little baby TV.
It's only 50 inches.
I'm pretty sure my TV's bigger than
something
yours,
like
David.
that. I know it's a little bit.
Yeah, I think you've got me beat by another 5 inches.
My TV looks small though because it's on an empty wall that's a lot bigger than the TV.
My husband's a video nerd. Our TV has to be big or he'll die.
Yeah.
Decent. Martina is like straight out sharing facts over here.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about how pretty Disa's eyes are.
Talking about that scene with Disa though. That's one...
I was trying not to touch that one, Martina.
I really
was
love
trying really hard not to.
I love Disa. I love that they have a mom element in there. Moms are underrepresented in stories.
I just don't like
and
her
so
look.
It's cool to not only have her be there, act like this powerful leader, but also just straight up act like a mom.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
That is the same scene though
most
where
of the
we
time,
hear where Elrond overhears her kids singing the secret password.
Oh, was that where he gets it?
That's where he gets it.
I had to rewatch it.
It was one of those things where the only reason I knew it is because I really paid attention when she was saying that's enough, kids, and then when he sings it, I'm like, oh, they were probably singing it. So I made the connection just because of general story. I hadn't actually noticed.
Why would you sing your secret password in front of your kids?
Yeah, why would you teach it to your kids? It's a dangerous.
Or it could be that it's a well-known dwarven like rhyme or whatever, and then that's why they have it as a secret because it's something that keeps elves up.
Passwords. Nailed it. Dwarves
I think it's something along those lines.
Buttload of songs.
Or even like just the idea
all
that
of the races. Tolkien mentions that dwarves love music probably the most.
Even more than elves, which is interesting. That's I would have guessed it would have been
even more than elves. And
it was just such a big coincidence. It was just very unbelievable.
It's pretty common.
No,
it's a pretty
Martina
common trope
is right.
or something
She mentions
like that.
maybe it's a lullaby and they made it a password. That's exactly it.
Which to David's point, he's saying that makes it a bad password, unless you're trying to only keep out elves or somebody who wouldn't know that lullaby. But I can see where I can get the complaint there, but I do think that's probably what they were going for. Either that or he wants them to, he wants them to be able to know it eventually in the future. It's the sort of thing that you'll see in a lot of those fantasy trope books where the parent has some sort of connection where they've taught the secret to their kids in a lullaby so that later on when the kid's going on an adventure, they know
it's
the
easy
password.
to remember. It's not that big of a stretch of imagination. Neither is singing to the stone. Because it would explain why music is such a huge deal to them.
But the fact that he's immediately right.
Exactly, He doesn't try anything else. He just tries the exact password.
He's right. He is smart. He is an elf. He is Elrond.
The scene also
His
brings.
dad's literally a star. A star, Alan.
His dad's a star. I get it. He's bright. It's so funny. It makes you convinced me. I like the show now. No, but the scene also brings to light the problem that the timeline just doesn't make sense at all. So Elrond goes to Khazad-dûm because he has a conversation with Celebrimbor, about how Celebrimbor thinks that Durin is keeping secrets from him. But Durin is in Khazad-dûm, and Celebrimbor isn't. So like, why would this be a conversation that Celebrimbor notices, and then he sends Elrond over, and then they just like pretend like the whole like lying to Elrond and trying to be coy was like, oh, but he's not here. Oh, but he didn't take his hammers.
Out, yeah.
It was just like a juvenile attempt at lying that
I thought it worked pretty well, like because she had her response to that a little bit more was
juvenile, though.
Yeah, but I felt like her response to it did a pretty good job of being like, well, no, like he can get down there that quick. He's not using that kind of tool.
But then they don't wait for Elrond to leave before Durin comes back the same day when he said he'd be gone for a week.
Yeah, and
it's
so
silly. It's so silly.
Yeah. But yeah, they also did think he was gone because they were supposed to have sent him escorted out.
I liked
to have been gone.
The one part of that I did like was showing Elrond using his elf eyes to lip read. I thought that was a cool scene.
But
the fact that Durin was even there to begin with was stupid.
Yeah, I agree.
Durin goes what he wants.
But they're literally they're like, hey, we're trying to keep this big secret. Oh no, your friend showed up and I told him that you're be gone for a week. I'm gonna go meet with you later today. Like like make sure Elrond is gone first or just something.
Well, they thought that they did because they said we got him an escort out. It's the escort that's the problem because the escort didn't see him out like they were supposed to.
He was alone.
Yeah, again,
just sitting there.
They put all the pieces there, but then it still doesn't like click all together because again they were like, oh, we made sure we got him an escort out, and then somehow he's still there. So it's like, did he slip away from his escort? We don't.
The reason why
you don't need to show us everything. You don't need to tell us everything. But sometimes there's that little bit of a like. Well, why is he without that?
The reason why there's not a good answer is because they didn't think about it. They needed him. They needed his character to find the secret, and they didn't think of a reason why he would.
Martina has a good comment. Make sure that he checked the ring cam. Make sure he left.
Yeah.
She actually has a better comment even further up. Jacob and her were talking about Elrond is better at guessing passwords than Gandalf.
Yeah.
That's a good
And Martina's getting a lot of love in the chat that she needs to be on more often. So
She does. She's magic.
Oh, yeah. That is a good joke. I missed that one in the chat, so thanks for pulling that up. Okay, Durin.
Okay, so
and also they finally like got interesting, and I was like, okay, there's going to be a cool scene where Durin is climbing through mines and dust and an earthquake to rescue these people, and it cuts away to Disa singing, and then they're all safe. Like I was like, this was finally a moment where Durin could have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool to see, but I don't know. I didn't mind it.
4 episodes in, though. I mean,
but 4.5 hours.
This is where again,
I know, and why did it end?
I will contrast this with House of the Dragon in that terms because 4 episodes in, 4 hours.
Cool,
okay, there's some cool stuff there going on, and I get that you're maybe trying to set the groundwork, but House of the Dragon does it so much better because it actually sets the groundwork, but it really it still feels interesting.
The singing would have been cool, but it could have been better. Compare it to the best scene.
If they had the singing and Durin doing something awesome.
Exactly. Compare it to the best scene from Return of the King. Exactly. Show her singing.
That would have been really
singing
cool.
and like a rock falling and then like moving out of the way because of the song that she's like. It's like, oh, it could have been amazing.
Yeah.
That's how I'm going to watch it in my head now as I continue on to that scene.
And then, Elrond is just sitting in her chair and he pops in a cherry tomato.
No!
As the dwarven miners are dying.
Oh, it's so annoying.
Make it happen in your fan edit, bro.
I might.
I did like the reveal of that they're mining mithril. I thought that was a cool.
You were surprised by that?
I
wasn't surprised,
started,
but I liked it.
screaming, It's mithril, like to my husband, like I'm so smart. I figured this out, and he's looking at me like, yeah.
What else would it be?
He's like, what else would it be?
Would they have Durin's Bane? Would they have Durin's Bane in the little box? What's that?
See, that was my actual first thought. I was like, are they going to go with that? Because I thought that would have been for Durin to find himself. So why did they have it early? But then it turns out it's mithril. I'm like, oh, cool. Because that's what I was worried about. It's like, okay, are you like, I'm not a big Tolkien person, but from everything I'm hearing, I'm like, you're messing with this timeline so much, and it's a weird thing. So if they messed with that part of the timeline too, I'm like, come on. But yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know, guys.
We've jumped around in this episode.
My number one goal for watching these shows is to live in Middle Earth for a little while.
Yeah,
I'm doing it.
There you go.
I guess.
Well, I mean, we see that in your background.
Like it does. It looks beautiful, and that makes it more painful to me because of how much potential this show could had.
That's so sad.
But the writing is just so piss poor. It's so.
But I don't think it's poor. I think it just needs work.
I'm more with Liz on that one, where it's like it's not great, it's not working for me great, but it hasn't stood out to me as much as you guys are seeing it. But I don't think it's great either. I don't think it's particularly.
They're not trying to polish a turd. It's not. I do believe that it's going to get better.
I hope so.
And honestly, the thing
You're very optimistic, and
I am optimistic. One of
that's a trait I am envious of. I've just seen so much that I don't have faith in that.
I have seen enough that I am sick and tired of disliking things.
Yeah,
I'm over it.
Yeah,
And I would much rather enjoy things and overlook flaws and be happy. Which is why I'm constantly thinking of why I like it as opposed to why I dislike it.
That's fair. I honestly envy that. But like I can't. I'm not capable of doing that anymore. I'm also coming out of. I'm also coming out of them. Amazon freshly butchering the Wheel of Time. Which is
Wheel of Time was garbage. This is better.
I don't know. I think I'd rewatch the Wheel of Time before I rewatch this.
I will never watch Wheel of Time again.
It's
I'm not
so
even
bad.
sure I want to read the books. The Wheel of Time was so bad. I'm not even sure I'll care.
And that is what infuriates me. I've had so many people tell me the same thing. Someone who, my good friend Tanner, who used to come on the show frequently, was already reading the books and watched the show and stopped. He said, I can't read the books anymore because all I see is the show. And the books are so beautiful. I love them. It's one of my favorite series of all time. And the show just completely butchered it. And I'm seeing the same patterns here. And I admit, Rings of Power could be good. And I want it to be good. But
I don't think you want it to be that good, though.
I
think
do.
You'd rather be right than have it be good.
love. Do you know how much I would love to be in Middle Earth again?
Oh, I'd love it.
I love Tolkien.
I love him. I love him, love him, love him.
As much as I enjoy being right, I have always admitted when I am wrong. I was 100% wrong about Spider-Man No Way Home. Well, 90% wrong.
Wait, did you like it or dislike it?
I thought it was going to be stupid.
Oh, okay.
And I ended up really enjoying myself.
Okay, because if you didn't like Spider-Man No Way Home, I will fight you.
The setup for the movie is still pretty bad. The reason, like, oh, we're going to do a spell. Like, I still dislike that, but I was able to overcome it and enjoy the movie because the movie itself was good. The premise is really dumb, and I still don't like that. I was right about that's the 10%. I was right, but I was wrong about the movie being garbage.
I cried. I freaking cried watching that movie.
I was also apparently very wrong about House of the Dragon. It's been pretty good so
Okay,
far.
so this is what I'm curious because I hate Game of Thrones. I've read one of the Game of Thrones books, and then
It's pretty much anti. It's pretty much anti-Tolkien.
hated
Like George R. R. Martin wrote it to subvert everything that Tolkien stood for.
I hate Game of Thrones. So I'm curious to see if House of Dragon is any good because I don't like the original context.
And I haven't read any of the books.
I don't like the show. I don't like the books. I think they're gross. I think George R. R. Martin's biggest problem is that he is a massive pessimist and he thinks only bad things happen all the time. And I hate that.
Yes.
So what I will say to this is because I've not read any of the Game of Thrones books. I didn't watch the original show, but because it was, now I'm on a show talking about pop cultural things, and this is something that's coming out, I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And while the story that they're telling may be that pessimistic negative story that you might not like,
the subtlety in which they do the storytelling is night and day. Like Rings of Power doesn't even hold a candle to what House of the Dragon is doing storytelling wise. You may not like the story being told or the world as much, but the way that it's being executed is day and night.
Because again, to my point,
the quality of execution, but if it's sending a message that isn't making me want to be a better person, I'm not interested.
That's totally fair. That there's things that aren't made for people, and that's fine. But it's to me it's the contrast of execution because they're both telling a similar story, and one's doing it.
That's
well,
fair.
Is not.
I remember being a film student and having people despise me because I don't like Citizen Kane. And as a film student, I was supposed to love Citizen Kane.
Okay,
that's obsessed with Citizen Kane.
I think love is strong.
Wow, that is a hot take. I was expecting to not like Citizen Kane.
I think it is a well-made movie. Yes. I think it is clever. I think it's the reason there are a lot of good movies today.
Okay,
but I did not like watching it.
But it's not your.
I will not watch it again.
Sure.
I fall in that same camp, Liz. I don't love Citizen Kane, but I appreciate everything that it did, and I think it is a fantastic tool for teaching aspects of film.
Okay, I was about to get very
most riveting film.
That's the thing. I think
you had me in the first half, and I was like, "What are you saying?" But I think you justified your existence in the last half of that statement.
Right.
Your opinions.
My thing was something that I discovered when I was a theater and media arts student was that I don't have to like something to acknowledge the quality that is in it.
Yes.
Which was literally the only way I was able to pass my classes, because if I had just written essays about the movies my professors forced me to watch, it would just constantly be talking about how miserable they made me because I'm an emotionally driven person. So I had to I
knew it.
I had to recategorize the way that I see things. And
surprised it took you this long, Mark.
Yeah. You're getting some love in the chat.
That's fair. Like I understand being able to appreciate something for its execution and not
I would say at least my perspective on the House of the Dragon, it's not that it's sending a message that is a negative message or anything like that, but it's in a world
it's pessimistic. It's very pessimistic.
It's in a negative world, and then there's things happening, and you're seeing these things happen. But again, it is really well told. So well executed. To your point of this difference between something you could enjoy versus and that's my biggest thing, where I have not minded most of Rings of Power, but then I look at something like House of the Dragon, where I'm like, they're doing their job better, even if I like the world in Lord of the Rings a lot better, or the characters a lot better. They're doing their job.
The story, and I like the message, and I like, because my big thing is, are they telling the story? Are they telling a story of hope? Are they talking about the dichotomy of good and evil? And are they sending out the message that good people will win, basically? Like good begets goodness, right? And so that matters to me more than anything else. It's one of the reasons no one has ever made a decent Solomon Kane movie.
That is a tough adaptation.
Is because Solomon Kane is a righteous.
Yeah.
What's the word? He's a righteous.
He's a compulsive do-gooder.
Yeah, he's a compulsive do-gooder, and every time they write a story about Solomon Kane,
they want to make it
bad man he is.
They want to make it gringy and dark.
Because they want to make it gringy and dark. But the thing is that you don't have to make Solomon Kane gringy and dark to make the stories gringy and dark, because he's literally fighting the most disgusting, gross, horrible, either evil people or evil monsters. But he's not the evil in it. And they're constantly trying to make him the evil one who has to redeem himself. He doesn't have to redeem himself. He's literally just someone who sees evil and destroys it.
Yeah, I was not expecting to start talking about Solomon Kane today. But really good books, guys.
To Mark's comment here, if all stories are all shiny happy, they'll be lies. I think there's a difference though between telling all shiny happy stories versus telling stories where you can still say that the end goal, the message is that being good is the right thing to do, and will, I don't know, at the very least, is the right thing to do
for you in the end. Being goodness is rewarded and evil is not. That's the whole point of it. And it doesn't have to be immediately rewarded. Goodness is going to suffer. It's just like what Samwise tells Frodo in the the Two Towers. Why we love old stories.
I definitely
struggle and they suffer, but if they're good.
I definitely agree with this conversation, this point that we're all talking about, which is to beat a dead horse is the exact reason I don't like Galadriel's character.
Exactly. That's the one problem. One of the problems I have with the show is it seems to be blurring the lines between good and evil. You have the whole dialogue between.
It's shown Adar. It's shown Adar and the orcs being more compassionate.
Exactly. I was going to bring that up too.
I don't think I agree with that.
No,
he's like caressing the dying orc and like, oh, I love you.
When in the original trilogy, what did they do when one of their own dies?
They ate him.
They toss
Looks
him
like
or eat
meat's
him.
back on the menu, boys, right? But here they reverently like, oh, we're going to do this ceremony thing and have a moment of silence and then carry you off.
More like a form of cult manipulation, though. Have you ever read stories about cult leaders and when something bad happens to a person and they act like oh, we're gonna take care of them, and in reality he's just like convincing people to commit suicide. That was the
but that's not how it read in the. That's not how it read in the scene. It read like, oh, we're going to have a little moment of silence for this fallen orc, and orcs are people too, and they feel for their dead comrades. And then again, you have that in the very first episode, or maybe it was the second episode, that conversation between Galadriel and her brother, before they travel to Middle Earth or whatever, that he whispers in her ear is like, oh. How do you know what's right or whatever? There's the stars, but sometimes the stars are brighter where down reflected on the ocean. How do I know what is good and what is evil? And he says sometimes you just have to do the thing and figure it out.
I think the point that he was trying to make is that you have to trust your intuition. You have to trust your own feelings. And one of the things that I think they're trying to get across with Galadriel, and they're just being really clumsy about it, is that she is deeply in mourning and is constantly being told no. When she wants to do something that will sort of, in her mind, help her overcome her grief. And then another thing happens, and another thing happens, and another thing happens. And it just gets so frustrating. And no, they're not doing it in a particularly clever way, but in their own clumsy way. I think they're trying to present how people react to situations when they experience grief and trauma. But they have a lot of work to do.
It's
Yeah.
weirder though because
It's
it's
not
been
coming
300 years of grief and trauma. You know,
It
she
is,
she
but
should
even
be more.
Elrond mentioned, you know, when Durin was like, "You haven't seen me in 20 years," and he's like, "You don't understand. That's like a blink of an eye for me.
Yeah,
that's not 20 years."
Although he had a little bit of a reversal on that, saying like, "Oh, the reason I came to," and I don't know, I end up feeling a little confused half the time as to whether he's being genuine or not, because it's like, were you being genuine before that? Oh, that was too much of a blink of an eye, and now you're being manipulative, or it's the other way around? Because he was saying like, "Oh, 20 years is too long even for an elf." But was that? I don't know. I can't get a read on it
Because he
myself.
was being a little bit manipulative because he was
Yeah,
there to do
yeah.
a job.
I'm just having a hard time getting
that's
that
his
read.
that's his
maybe
particular
my own
duality.
issue, you know,
is that I think he does want to be a good friend, but he
Mhm.
also needs something from Durin
Yeah.
and doesn't want to admit it, and doesn't want to admit it to himself because in his mind he's like, "Oh no, I'm a good person. Like this is just like this nice advantage that I get to go see my friend, and it also helps me and my new father figure because my daddy's a star now."
Oh,
so,
I loved that conversation he had with him and Elrond, the advice that he gives about his father. That was great.
Yeah.
And then
Well, the
conversation
scene
father
with
at the end
Durin
was
and his
great.
father was probably the best scene in the whole show.
Yeah, that was really well done.
But David, you triggered my trap card.
Oh no!
You mentioned the best metaphor of all time. What's the difference between a boat and a rock? And Jake Byronstein also makes fun of that because the boats look up and rocks look down. This is the best meme of the week, baby.
Wood when it looks down.
Isn't there like a buttload of metal on that thing though?
I think it's a metal.
Not a lot.
If there was a lot of metal on it, then why did they have it on their raft?
Yeah,
When it was attached to more wood, it was able to float. Yeah, I don't know.
It's mostly wood. You can see this is wood, and then there's a little thing of the little
mast
band
is wood. Yeah,
and she's attached to a giant mast.
And Middle Earth has to follow all the laws of physics on Earth too.
It kind of does.
That actually didn't bother me too much. The fact that sank, but yeah, I don't know.
I didn't care.
Little bit silly.
But like I said, if the story makes me happy and makes me want to be good, I can overlook a whole heck of a lot.
And to Mark actually kind of made a point too, but it doesn't always actually work out, at least in this life. And evil can win. Do you like that? No, but it's more realistic. To me, I think that's why I do appreciate things like what I've seen in. I watched The Boys on Amazon, and I watched watching the House of the Dragon, feeling like, for me, for the most part, I feel like it's not saying that when the people that are doing the good thing lose, it's not saying that they were wrong. I think it does a good job usually of saying they were right. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, at least in the context of this story of this time. And for me, I can still take away that I believe it'll work out in the end or whatever. So it doesn't take away from me that I can enjoy that part. But yeah.
And that's my personal belief, is that even if you know bad things are currently happening to good people and it's not working out right now, it eventually will. And I don't like nihilism because I don't believe in it.
Yeah. Anyway, I keep on pulling us back to the chat stuff.
Okay.
So I don't want to.
I think we've covered most of the episode, but we haven't covered by far the worst part for me. But to lead into it, I want to ask Liz a trivia question, and it might be a bad It might be a bad trivia question because I don't know if it's in all of the printings, but it's in the version I have, and it's in the audiobook. Tolkien's introduction.
I might not know.
Tolkien's introduction to The Lord of the Rings. It's at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. Have you read that?
Not in years.
Do you remember it? Maybe. He talks about one thing, and it's basically like a disclaimer for his book. Saying,
is it talking about allegories?
Yeah, that's the one.
He says, right? I loathe allegories.
Tolkien loathes allegories. It's his least favorite thing on earth. And
in fact, he detests it. And what does his best friend do?
Constant
write an entire series that is 100%.
Jesus was a lion.
100%.
Yeah, he's digging on C.S. Lewis a little bit. But I think what caused him to write that is because people kept asking him if the Lord of the Rings was an allegory for something, and he's like, no, it's just a story I wrote, guys.
War. It's about this, and his whole goal is that this is not an allegory, but it is applicatory. He wanted to write things that people could relate to personally and apply to their own lives.
So, you want to guess at my least favorite part of episode 4? It has to do with allegory.
Is it Theo? That's one of the only things we haven't talked about.
It's Trump in Numenor, boys.
Oh no.
The whole this episode was filled with allegory, trying to make Numenorians. Farazan is Trump.
Okay.
And the guild.
Farazan is as he is written.
Did you pay attention to the episode when they're complaining?
Yes,
they said, what was their problem with the elves?
The
elves are taking our jobs.
But he comes in and kind of says, why are we afraid of that? Like, no, that's not even a problem because there's just one. It was the rest of them that were worried about that. He kind of placated them. He calmed them down and said, we're Numenor, we can do it. We'll be fine.
That's a realistic fear that he could impose upon people because elves don't sleep. They can work longer. They don't get fatigued as quickly. It actually makes sense that he would say, hey, they're going to come here and they're going to take all of our jobs.
That doesn't make sense. It's one elf. So what's their in
one
the book?
elf? It doesn't make sense, but tyrants frequently don't make sense.
I know, but it was so on the nose that like the reasoning for because it's a different reason from what's in the source material. The reason why they wanted to keep elves out is because of what Numenor was trying to do, which I don't know if I should spoil.
Yeah, don't spoil.
There is a specific reason why they don't want elves in Numenor. And that I don't know if they're going to do the same thing in the TV show, right?
But is he saying that because he doesn't want elves in Numenor, or is that just his way of trying to convince people to keep them out?
It was they had a rally where they were like, yeah, no elves, get them out of here, go back to your country. Like
maybe I missed something because I totally thought that he came in and kind of calmed them down when the other guy was working him up. He was just like, "Oh, hey,
it was the other guy giving the speech." But it was such an obvious parallel to current day politics that and turning Farazan into the populist candidate that it was just very painful. And I was like, Tolkien would have hated this. So
I don't know. I didn't catch that, but.
No, I didn't pick up on that.
Are there people writing articles about it? Or?
No.
It's kind of easy to make that comparison to any character who is acting a little tyrannical, any demagogue sort of situation.
Also, how did he have glass?
There's not that many degrees of separation.
How did Farazan have like glass cups of wine just ready for an entire mob of people?
That was a little bit silly, yeah.
You don't carry around glass cups of wine?
No. But for an entire mob?
Not a politician.
That was one of the things actually though, too, even though I was saying like what didn't he come in and calm them down? The fact that he then like is kind of like buddies up with the guy who was giving the speech and had that prepared almost makes me wonder if he had staged the whole thing, which would track with how it is that he has that wine there, because he's just like, hey, we're Numenor, we're going to be awesome, and let's all drink, and he like had basically kind of staged the, hey, let's try to get something going, and said, I'm also going to have wine here so that everybody loves me because I came in and gave a good speech or whatever.
That's a good
point. It was definitely planned because I laughed when he said drinks are on me or drinks are whatever. And then they just come out from you're not in a bar, and then drinks come parading out. I'm like,
yeah, that was very confusing.
Like the love
planned this, I guess.
Also, there was another confusing line when he's trying to like quell the crowd. He says, "Look down at the guild crests each of you bear."
Yeah, I didn't know.
Does
that was
everyone in Numenor have a guild crest?
Yeah, they actually mentioned that early on in the episode.
Did they? I missed
that.
that.
To work a specific job, you have to have a guild crest. You
No,
have
but
to
he
be
says
guild.
everyone in the crowd has one.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's like having a driver's license.
Interesting.
That's weird.
That's the impression that I got.
Yeah,
but he was talking about the guilders specifically, and this was a crowd of normal people.
Yeah, but normal people are.
Well, they all have jobs, and
they
don't all work as guilders, though, right?
For me, that was a storytelling piece that told me that they all did, rather than being like, "What? How do they all?"
I got the impression that if
they
you
all
were
did.
part of the guild, you were a child.
I didn't understand it.
And in an apprenticeship.
But but Halbrand couldn't even get an apprenticeship.
Couldn't get a job.
You weren't even allowed to have an apprenticeship without having a guild crest, that doesn't make sense.
No, because he's not a kid. He's not in one of the guild trade schools. He would have to go to a trade school.
To me, this sounds like a kind of clumsily done because it wasn't clear. Because first of all, it wasn't clear that everybody actually had one, even though they talked about how important it was to have one.
They just said you can't work as a blacksmith unless you have one. So I thought it was just a blacksmith thing.
And I really like how Jacob mentions that giving alcohol to a mob.
Yeah, that's gonna calm them down.
I guess if you give them one glass, maybe they'll.
If you give them enough, right? Then
if you give them alcohol, he'll want one more. He'll ask for some milk to wash it down. Wait, no, that's
a different story.
And there was one more line that I laughed out loud at when Galadriel is talking to Muriel. It's Muriel, yes, Queen.
Yeah,
Muriel.
Regent.
Queen Regent Muriel. And she says, "Hey, let's take all of your people and start a war against Sauron." And the Queen's response is, "That's the most surprising and ambitious proposal I've heard in weeks." What kind of proposals is she hearing on a weekly basis?
I thought she was being sarcastic.
It didn't feel sarcastic.
I picked it up as sarcasm. Also, congratulations for having a Tolkien story that passes the Bechdel test.
Oh, the Bechdel test is
wow.
a joke.
That's never happened before. So that was fun.
Did you know that the Bechdel test was created as a joke?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't supposed to be taken seriously.
It wasn't, but it is. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Okay.
This hasn't necessarily bothered me as much, but I know that that's something that going in, a lot of people were really worried about. But it hasn't bothered me at all the way it's actually come across. So,
but weren't they talking about a man though? They were talking about Sauron. So, does it pass the Bechdel test?
Does it? Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
If they're just talking about like,
they also mentioned her daddy. They mentioned Muriel's
daddy. We'll try again.
Yeah.
We'll try again.
It's almost like it's impossible to have a conversation without mentioning half of the population. It's such a silly concept.
It is a really silly concept, but men can have a full-on conversation where they're only talking about men all the time.
Oh.
So it's not outside of the norm
to
assume that it's silly that it never shows up in person. But once again, it's one of those things where if you're going to do representation, do it right and make it fit.
Yeah.
Because women talk to each other and don't mention men at all the time. I am a witness to that. But it doesn't. Anyways, it just has to work. That's all. But when it's that expansive, it's not really the priority that it needs to be.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's all of that's most of my notes.
There's a couple other things.
I will say this episode felt like the ending of Return of the King, but done poorly. I kept thinking, okay, we're done now, and it just kept going.
Really?
I legitimately almost fell asleep. I thought it was very painful.
Buddy, I had fun.
I haven't finished it yet, so
yeah.
Did you have fun, Jared? Jared had fun. Look
It's
at
been
Jared.
fun. Yeah.
He had fun.
I'm always having fun though. I do tend to lean towards what you're saying, where I tend to try to. I prefer finding the positive in things. This show has allowed me to see more of the negative than I usually would be willing to see. Which there's benefit to that. There's good to be able to actually recognize.
I mean, I don't have a problem with recognizing flaws. It just
But-
can't be. I just don't enjoy that being the only thing I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just had a little blast.
Good.
I really love being in Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I will admit I am more willing to overlook plot holes.
Yeah.
And I will forgive some poor dialogue here and there just so that I can get my Tolkienian fix.
Yeah.
But I understand it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And I can totally get that. But
it's hard
there's
for me to
one-
get that Tolkienian feel though when the dialogue is so bad.
Yeah.
Because
Same here.
Tolkien's dialogue is so infamously awesome. So
It
like that's what pulls me out. That's what's keeping me from
It
feeling
is
like I'm in Middle Earth.
Awesome. It's also infamously complex.
Yeah.
And a little biblical at times.
Uh.
And I can see how modern writers could stumble
get that,
attempting to make it more relatable.
To me, I've felt like the dialogue and some of the odd choices of like how they talk and the things like that. It hasn't bothered me as much because it still does speak to the idea of like Tolkien and elves, and a lot of them would have those kind of really weird, odd ways of speaking. But I feel like maybe they're not quite hitting the mark in terms of like getting the level of what we've actually seen where it's done well. They're like, I can see them trying, and it doesn't bother me that they're trying, but I just don't feel like they're actually getting quite there.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even talk about Arondir and his and how the elves forgot that they had arrows.
You know, I'm not sure I can give a completely unbiased opinion of him. I was very distracted by his
fade
face.
How does he cut his hair?
With a knife.
How?
with his razor sharp wit?
I don't know. I did like the part where he catches the orc arrow and sends it back. That was very cool.
That
very
was so
Legolas
cool.
of him, you know.
that
But
was great.
on that,
Sorry, I'm the only girl here, so I gotta represent.
No, he's
for
good.
just a
He's
minute.
good. He's good looking.
Just a minute.
I think despite
Did
his
all
short
of us
hair,
a favor by
I think
existing.
Elendil is sexier though. If I had to
I
choose.
am actually liking him the most out of all the elves. Elrond, even though his story and his writing is better, he is not working for me as Elrond. He just doesn't look right. And the short-haired elves is weird to me, except for Arondir, who for me that worked really well because I know there were a lot of people with the concept of this being the stuff for Europe in particular. So the idea of bringing in people with people of color, but he works for me as a really good elf because he has, in spite of the color of the skin, like he has very fair skin, like just it's very smooth and pretty and nice, and he has a very good elvish look to him, even though he's the elf with the shortest hair.
Yeah,
he's the only one besides the king.
Most of the
Gilgalad.
elves have unusually short hair, but like hairstyles change over time. That really
I don't know. It
doesn't
felt
bother me.
weird to me. I don't like the look of the way that they style.
It wouldn't
their
bother
short
me as
hair.
much. It wouldn't bother me as much but it's all of them. Like none of the elves except for Gilgalad have long hair.
Yeah, which
they're
I
always
mean,
described as long hair.
fashion changes, hairstyles change
Yeah.
over time.
I just really don't
It's
like
not that big a deal.
yeah, but elves are supposed to be ageless and unchanging. So
But again, to me, the one with the shortest hair, Arondir, he
Because
works the best. I think he looks
I agree,
so
yeah.
Their
good.
hometown changes all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. currently living in Linden and Lyndon. Does anybody
Or-
see Lyndon in the Third Age? Where did Lyndon go, guys?
I don't know.
Unchanging my hairy hobbit feet.
Yes, but I do really like Arondir. I think he is the best elf that they've got in the
I think
show,
he's
so.
acting the most like an elf.
Oh,
Yes.
for sure.
Mhm.
With the exception of maybe Elrond, who's very elfy.
He's very regal, I think, in his communication.
Very
I
regal,
guess.
very much.
He doesn't look like Elrond, like I said, but he does acting, I think, like an elf.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to the idea of so many elves looking older.
Yes, way too many
Played
wrinkles.
by older actors. It's not completely outside the mark because Tolkien said that elves age until they decide to stop. And that's the only rules he put for it. So if they want to look like an older man, they could have. They didn't in the Tolkien version because he wanted them all to look like runway models.
Everybody has their kink,
I mean, the Peter Jackson version, because he wanted them all to look like runway models. But it's not completely unrealistic that they would look older because that was their choice in how they wanted to age, which is really difficult to put in a outside of a book medium.
Yeah.
Because how would you explain that?
Yeah.
It's challenging. So that took a little bit of getting used to, but it does make it easier to figure out where people are in the spectrum of authority, which was an interesting take on the casting director, I would say.
So, in regards to the plot of what actually happens here, the people decide to leave town and not bring any of their livestock or their food.
It was a rushed exodus, yeah.
Because they were afraid.
They waited till morning, though. They had time.
Yeah.
Did they wait till morning? I don't know.
She said we depart in the morning.
We leave at first light, and they stayed the night there, which is not the time. That's when.
Although
the
traveling at
show
night
up.
also would have been problematic because then they're out in the
Yeah,
elevator.
they couldn't travel at night.
Yeah. Well, speaking of
Well,
traveling
and
at night, Theo is stuck in the well.
Speaking of traveling at night, Theo waits until it's dark
till night
to
to
try
escape,
and
yeah.
escape.
But not only does he wait till
and then
night,
his
but
mom
at the end,
magically finds them in the middle of the woods.
So at the end, though, they
Yeah, but-
escape as the sun is coming up. So he not only did he wait till night, he waited till almost the end of the night
not quite
to run. And
Could
then
have waited like
it's just-
one more hour.
Exactly. Just wait another hour, Theo, and the sun will be up.
I think the logic behind it, the logic behind people leaving first thing in the morning and not bringing anything with them is that they were in a hurry as soon as they could leave because as soon as they left their homes, they felt vulnerable. But they could have brought their stuff.
But then,
And Theo's original plan of saying, let's go down to the village during the day to collect some food.
But when the kids,
Seems like
when
a
the
pretty
kids,
solid idea.
when the kids show up, there are just bags of food sitting there waiting to be like they. Why didn't they grab them on their way out?
They were grabbing it though. People were grabbing at it as soon as they came through the gates.
No, I meant why didn't they take it when they left? They had all these. They had stuff like piled up ready to
Right.
go that they didn't take.
Right,
Also,
and it was because they were getting that theory that they were like in like this massive hurry and everything.
Well, the only thing that we see that's actually a bag ready to go is that grain that he goes into the bar to get. The rest of them, we come in after the kids have had some time in the town and have already gathered things. So maybe they weren't all together like that. The kids put them together into the
I know
wheelbarrow.
they had at least some food because they didn't say we have no food. They said we're running out of
They
food.
said we have 3 potatoes.
I think
That's
it was 5,
all.
but yeah.
Well, that was all that they had left.
Left.
They had already
After one
given
day?
out their other food to people.
It's been one day.
That was all that they had left. So yeah, there's
Well, one day
there's
was that
some
many
hope there.
people, that would have
Although
been
any decision
ton of
that
potatoes.
Theo makes that's a smart decision is an unrealistic thing for a teenage boy to do.
To go to the town or
To do literally anything
Right.
that is smart.
Yeah.
Have you met teenage? You've
Yeah.
been teenage boys.
yeah, but also wasn't that the people's plan? Like Bronwyn brings it up and says, "Hey, we need to go back and get." They
She said we
discuss
need
it.
to go back and get it, but she didn't want Theo to do it because he's
Yeah,
an idiot.
But
yes,
nobody
but
else
why didn't
does.
they do it? They bring it up and say, "Okay, let's go back to the town and grab food," and then no one does it.
I thought it was Theo that brought that up because they were just saying
it was Bronwyn.
We're out of food, and Bronwyn said
Theo wasn't even there.
That sucks. We're gonna have to ration some more. And then Theo walks up and says, "Let's go back to the town hall."
I got that impression
she has
too.
the
I thought it was
conversation
Theo's
with Theo
idea.
after the fact.
Well, because he comes up and says, "Why can't we just go down to the town?" And she's like, "No. We're sending hunters. Go send hunters. We're not going to go down." to the town.
It was Bronwyn's idea. They bring it up, discuss it, and then she goes, talks to her son, and he's complaining and says, "You can either help or not help." Which
I need you guys to rewatch.
That's definitely not how I remember that going. Yeah, I think Theo brought it up, and she's like, "No, we're not doing that. I don't want you to go." And not just I don't want you to go. We're not doing that. We're sending hunters instead. Which seems like, I don't know. Theo had a smart plan until he decided to separate and go like we've got some food. It's not going to be enough by any means, but like we've got some food. I'm going to hang on and go on my own and get in danger.
It didn't make sense to me, and I felt like the only reason that it happened is because they needed an excuse for Theo to get separated and chased by orcs, which they already had a good reason. He could have left the knife hilt behind. And he could have gone back for the knife hilt, and that would have been very realistic for a teenage
Or again,
boy.
if she had been like, that is a good idea. We'll send some people to do that, but you need to stay here because you're a teenage boy and stay. And he sneaks off with them anyway, or something like that. Like
I think he should have gone back for his knife hilt because that would have been a very believable teenage boy thing to do something stupid.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that they had this sword of Narsil?
Yeah,
that was cool.
In the background, yeah.
Yeah.
It felt.
This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I just really wanted to talk about it because it made me feel excited.
It kind of felt out of place to me. It was just like, oh, there it is, yay! Like it didn't feel like it should have been where it was.
Easter egg for me.
It's fine. I like those sort of Easter eggs.
I know what that is.
It's a freaking cool sword, though, man.
You've got either the cap. I caught that reference, or the Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Like the Leo DiCaprio me. That's me watching the show constantly.
90% of the show, yeah.
Yeah.
That interspersed with the Captain America. I got that reference.
For me,
I got that reference.
For me, it's just Pulp Fiction. That's my every time I watch this show.
And that's one of the funny things is that my husband and I were talking about what some of our favorite movies were and what the disparity in quality was between some of the movies that were still on our top 5 anyways.
Yeah.
Made like the very important decision that a movie does not have to be good to be like my favorite enjoyable movie. It's sort of become this trope of movies that were not considered good for their time but aged well enough that people still watch them and still enjoy them, still like them, even though they see all of these issues and all of these plot holes. There's still something about it that just makes them happy when they watch it. So I'm curious to see if this show is gonna turn into that for me or not, because
I'm curious about that, Liz.
I just don't care.
I don't know. They're not letting people review it.
They're not letting people review it on Amazon, but the internet exists.
Yeah.
No,
so I'm curious about that, Liz, though, because I agree. There's lots of old movies that are still really good, but parts of the stuff is dated. But I'm curious what parts, because to me, it's mostly the visual effects in old shows. The visual effects are quite dated, but the story is just amazing. Like I don't know, Princess Bride or Willow or
Babylon 5.
Yeah,
has the worst special effects of all time, but it's good.
But so Rings of Power, on the other hand, the CGI is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What's lacking for me is the dialogue and the story and the plot coming together. So I don't know. I'd be curious to see if
there are some of them that do have weak stories.
Or with time, is it sort of just going to flow into something that I'm accustomed to that I kind of like anyways? This is not super applicable, but I'm one of the few people that I know personally who loves the 2005 Pride and Prejudice.
That's the newest one, right? With not
Keira Knightley.
And
like people will straight up not watch it and they won't go back to it because it's not like the A&E version, which is more accurate.
No, I agree. I think it is a well-made movie.
And I think it's a really fun movie, and I think the romance in it is really well done, and the costumes are not remotely accurate, like not even close.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still something that I'll go back to.
I think it's mostly the soundtrack that makes that movie great.
The soundtrack is pretty fabulous. And I'm curious to see what you guys think about this soundtrack because their hands were so tied.
It's got some good. Howard Shore is amazing.
Yeah.
And some of the themes will be like, oh, that's good. But half of the time I don't even hear the music. Like I feel like it's just kind of background, like not supposed to be memorable. But then occasionally there will be a theme where like, oh, that's really good. I think that the Dwarven theme is done really, really well.
Yeah, but to that effect, though, there hasn't been a single time when the music has stood out, and I said that does not fit.
I don't remember the tune.
Yeah, I never thought something didn't fit.
It's been fine.
Yeah. So that's nice, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think to sort of put what Liz was talking about with the idea of like something that may have plot holes but you enjoy anyway because you just love the story. It's like things that we watched as kids that like our parents would have just pulled their hairs out because it doesn't make any sense or it was all kinds of wonky and weird and it has plot holes, but we just enjoyed it. So now we watch it and we're like, we can see the plot holes, but we enjoy it anyway because we have the nostalgia of watching it. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of plays in with me to the difference and why I think that there's a lot of things that like you guys will point out that you have issues with. It didn't bother me because I don't have a feeling that I don't like this show. So like when you point out, I'm like, that is kind of interesting. It just didn't stand out to me. But because you guys are already bothered by some of the things that are going on with it, then these little things like some of the dialogue choices and some of the clunkiness, it goes from being clunky to being like awful. Because of the perspective that you already have on it, it pulls it down. Whereas for Liz, she can skip over that because she's just loving it here. So to your point, like, where's it going to land for you in the future? It'll be really interesting to see. But my guess is it'll be one of those things that because you had so much fun watching it, even it'll all depend on if it ends in a way that makes you feel happy about having watched the show.
That is so true. Because if they turn this into a Lost ending, I will riot.
Like I went into when the Ender's Game movie was coming out. I love Ender's Game and all of the books that came with it and all that. And so when I was hearing about the movie coming out, I got so excited. I reread all the books and I went into it knowing, you know what, they're going to have to change and adapt things. So I'm going to go with it. I'm just going to say I like it and I'll go from there. Because I went through that same journey with like the Harry Potter movies where I didn't everything for a while. Until then I watched them later and I was like, oh, you know, they're fine for what they are. They miss pieces, but it's okay. And I was fine with the Ender's Game movie until the end. And then I'm like, oh, I hated that ending. And so all the rest of the problems that I like skimmed over at the beginning, I'm like, and they
erupted.
This is terrible. And it was
floated back to the surface.
Yeah. I didn't hate the Ender's Game movie. I thought it did probably the best that it possibly could have done.
They needed to make it a trilogy. I could go into the whole thing, but
Ender's Game in general though is just such an impossible adaptation because half of the book takes place in the kid's head.
Yeah,
but I think that you can do what they did there.
Playing a video game and then thinking about playing the video game and then and then going into theology about thinking about playing the video. Like it's
so to your point, like I think they adapted the parts of it that they could very, very well in terms of the fact that like they couldn't adapt the fact that it's so in his head, and they didn't, and they found out how to tell the story without having to be in his head. So they did that well. But it's so rushed. It's something that's supposed to take. It's kind of like that's some of the things that I'm having issues with sometimes with this, where the passage of time feels weird, and partially it's because they're having to condense things that shouldn't need to be condensed, that need to be stretched out. So same thing with Ender, where it's like he started out when he was like 6, getting up to battle school, and he ends when he's like 12. This takes place over like 6 years, and they make it seem like it takes place over 6 days, maybe a week or maybe 6 weeks, and it's like. And that's the problem where it's because they had to do it in a single movie. And then, of course, the thing that really ended up being the worst thing is they did this one-off thing. And so they didn't allow it to be set up for the right stuff. So the way that they tie in the queen and the egg just was so clunky and poorly done that it made me so mad that now I look at the rest of it and I'm like, yeah, they need to have been able to take time on this. Anyway,
it is
I
one
know
of my favorite books of all time, though. I love
Yeah.
that story.
Have you read any of the rest of the books in the series?
I started read. No, I've read the Ender's Shadow, which I
So that
I
one's a
love.
good one.
I love, and I started several times reading.
Speaker for the Dead.
Speaker for the Dead. I was going to say Shadow of the Hegemon. I'm like, that's not the second one.
Yeah.
I've started Speaker for the Dead, and I get busy every time and I have to drop it.
Yeah, it changes a lot. It makes it very different. But to your point of like all the things that they explore, the theology and the like interesting things, they really dive into that with Speaking for the Dead, and then into Children of the Mind and Xenocide.
Yeah.
There's some really cool stories that they tell in there. Some really cool concepts that they like dive into and explore. It's really, really cool. And then the rest of the Shadow series is really cool. A really cool like geopolitical exploration of all that, and that is so well done.
I think we need to get some rocks for Mark here.
Yeah,
I
you
didn't like Ender's Game book.
Rocks, Mark. Oh my gosh,
that is
I feel like Ender's Game was
that is a bad take.
I feel like Ender's Game was a spiritual successor to Dune.
Okay.
And I haven't read Dune, and I need to, but
I have read Dune.
Guys, Dune Part 2 wraps filming this month, guys.
Ooh, really?
I have. Okay. So
yes!
I'm going to get destroyed for this.
Don't you say it. Don't you say it.
I like the movie better than the book.
Okay. That's fine.
That's fine. That's
I thought you were going to say
opinion.
I thought you were going to say you didn't like the movie.
I like the movie. Okay, the problem with the book Dune is that the writer doesn't know how to describe anything. You go into a room and you know what the political intrigue is. You know who's talking to who.
It wasn't.
You don't know what they're
was
wearing.
not the focus of the book. That's fine.
You don't know
And
what
the
they're
movie
wearing.
Did, and
you
the
don't know
movie
what
did
the
it really
room
well.
looks like. You don't know what the landscape looks like other than sand.
The movie made it very
boring.
atmospheric, and it was beautiful.
And the movie was gorgeous. It took all of the issues that I had with the book and erased them. And it made me really, really happy to see.
Well,
I made sure that when I got HBO
right
Max,
back.
that was the first thing I hit play on. But I knew I had to get to the Raised by Wolves that we were talking about on the show here, and so I haven't actually sat and watched it yet. But I'm thinking I will do it before Dune Part 2 comes out, so that I can go see that in the theater and
you
kind of
haven't
connect them together.
seen Dune yet?
I haven't.
Jared,
What is wrong with you?
get out of here and go watch Dune, sir.
It's so good.
Get out.
Mark.
The only reason I'm actually holding back is, first of all, there's lots of things to watch, but second of all, I've now kind of gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, when the next Dune, when Dune Part 2 is coming out, I'm thinking that's when I'll really say, okay, I'm going to watch Dune in preparation for Dune Part 2 coming out. So,
Mark, I'm curious on your opinion, and I will eventually read all the Dune books.
Of the sequels,
there's a few. I'm curious about your opinion past Chapter House, where it's his son, right, that started writing in the Dune universe. Good or bad? I've heard very it's like it's either hot or cold. I've heard very positive things or extremely negative things of.
Did you guys see that meme of what's his face's successor ends up being, like several generations down the line? Where he's a sandworm with a human face.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna put Timothy Chalamet's face on a giant worm.
I think
there's a lot of people who wouldn't care. They'd just be happy about the face being there.
It's kind of a
I
meme,
don't know why. He looks like a Victorian boy who got sick.
It's kind of a meme, but also kind of similar to God Emperor of Dune. But it's not. It's different.
It surpassed the land of silliness.
Yeah,
it really did. Although you guys, it is 10 o'clock in Arkansas right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I have to get my kids to school at 7 a.m. So I
Okay.
have to skedaddle.
Well, thanks for joining us. It was a lot of
I'm
fun.
glad you were here because I like not being the only one trying to be a little positive. But it was also interesting to be a little bit more negative than you are on this too. Like to be somebody on the negative side of it a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Really quickly, She-Hulk, good or bad?
She-Hulk, good or bad? Entertaining.
Really?
The quality level is mediocre, but the entertainment level is bananas.
I think it's funny because it's the worst thing I've ever seen, but not because the jokes are actually landing.
I find many of the jokes are landing sometimes on purpose and sometimes it's funny on accident.
Yeah.
And I am low-key obsessed with Wong's new bestie.
No, thank you.
No,
because I
the
love
prostitute
this character because she's so absurdly obnoxious but weirdly helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the thing is,
the fact that Wong willingly hangs out with her anyways is
Somewhat lonely.
hilarious to me. I think that's so funny. And I want to see what she's like sober so badly.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Obviously,
Thank
welcome
you.
back.
No. Namadia.
Go
See you guys later.
take care of your kids or whatever you said.
Matt, Liz, great to see you.
Bye.
We'll have to come visit you sometime.
Absolutely. See you guys.
Okay. Bye. On the note of me always being negative, I want to introduce a new segment in the show that I don't know if there's going to be a stinger, but I haven't created one of me recommending something that is good because there is still light in this world, and it's in the thumbnail, so you might not be surprised, but because I still have an HBO subscription, I've finally gotten around to watching Band of Brothers. And I am loving it.
Only ever heard good things. Yeah.
I know it's one of those shows where like everyone was like, "Oh, it's so good, it's so good." I didn't have HBO, right, and never got around to it. And holy cow, is it good? I'm with the first 3 episodes, and it's really, really cool. Just how they're telling the story, like it's not one of those war movies that sensationalizes the violence. In fact, it's very violent, but it's done in a way that just makes you so uncomfortable that you're just like, war is so gross. But they did a really good job of, they interviewed as many of the survivors as they could, and then got the rest of the story from the journals of the soldiers. And I'm told it's pretty historically accurate. But man, is it an emotional, just like, oh, these poor boys.
Yeah. I have every intention of checking it out. I have a lot of like respect, connection kind of feeling towards the military and all that. You know, it was high school ROTC, but I did high school ROTC for years, and I loved my time, and I loved the connection to that. I have a bunch of friends who went in the military, obviously not during wartime like that, you know. But I've always felt like a lot of respect for that. So it's like I feel like I want to check that out. That's awesome.
Holy crap,
Jacob! But that's really cool.
Liz take off.
Yeah, she took off. I am loving it so far, and so it's not new. But it's a good thing, and it's out there. I highly recommend it so far. When you bring up ROTC, the first episode mostly deals with all of these recruits in boot camp, and the drill sergeant is played by the guy from Friends. I don't remember any of their names because I didn't watch it. The one who gets with Rachel,
Ross, the
Ross,
yeah.
Yes,
he's also the voice of the giraffe and the
which is when you first see him, you're like,
yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing him as a drill sergeant.
This is the guy that's yelling at everybody, but he is phenomenal in the role.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's also got I can't remember his name, but he had a TV. Oh, what's his name? I really like him. He's not in a lot of stuff. He's in a lot of TV. Damian Lewis. He's in a TV show called Life. It was a really good police procedural that only got 2 seasons that I loved. Or did it just get 1? It was 1 or 2. Can't remember. Canceled too soon. It's fun. Go watch Band of Brothers. I'm on episode 4. I started it and had to stop because it was because
I've only ever heard good things.
Because my newborn baby finally fell asleep and it was 4:00 in the morning, and I thought, okay, I can sleep now.
I've all had those days.
Yeah, good stuff. Let's do some bad takes. You guys ready for this? Y'all ready for this? Here we go.
Screen Rants. Bad takes.
She-Hulk's costume reveal won't be comics accurate, and that's good. And to that I say, cowards. You cowards. Adapt She-Hulk. Adapt She-Hulk and do it right. Come on. Come on. Yeah, but nothing happened in She-Hulk. It doesn't even show you the costume.
Yeah.
The whole episode is about getting the costume, and then
it's in the trailer, but yeah.
We get the tease.
That shot right there.
It's funny though, because I feel like more is happening in She-Hulk than in Rings of Power, and nothing is happening in either of the shows.
We got the tease of the helmet.
And they look so dumb. The yellow Daredevil looks so bad.
I was kind of hoping when we saw it in the trailer that it was just lighting that seemed like it was reflecting, but it turned out not. And
it's comic accurate, but it's bad.
Yes, and the comics quickly moved on from the yellow suit.
I'm leaving myself
because it was bad
to see how they executed, how it looks on screen. But yeah,
Jacob's grandpa took out a Panzer tank with a shoulder-fired rocket.
Wow,
your grandpa's freaking cool.
Freaking awesome, yeah.
Our grandpa served in the war, and he would never talk about it.
Yes, I had a grandpa that served in Korea,
but he was mostly he never had to shoot his gun, right, David? He wasn't.
I don't think so. He never saw active combat, but he was deployed. But I don't know. He, like I said, he wouldn't tell us.
He never said.
We asked him about it, and he refused to say a single thing about the war.
I'm sure he saw some.
He hated camping.
I'm sure he saw some pretty bad stuff, but he was blessed to have avoided. I mean, maybe not. I mean, your grandpa sounds cooler, so. War is hell. War's gross.
Yeah.
But man, okay. Here's the next one. She-Hulk, the 9 best fourth wall breaks in the series.
Is that all of them?
Which is all of them.
I have not minded them at all. They've been fine, but
sorry, let me fix the title. List of all of the times that She-Hulk talks to camera.
Yep.
And none of them are funny. None of the jokes land.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there have been maybe 1 or 2 that I didn't mind, but most of them just felt out of place and confusing. The way they're edited, it's confusing when she's actually breaking the fourth wall. Sometimes
it's not done well.
No. It's fine for me because it's generally like, I don't know, anytime, because she just kind of, the only one that was confusing was her with Hulk, that very first one that listed, because you're trying to figure out whether she is doing so in the story or not because he reacts to her, sort of thing. Because so you have the like, who are you talking to thing, but then it doesn't quite get to that. But the rest of them, she's usually alone, so it's never been a matter of like, oh, is this in the story or out of the story? Because it doesn't really matter to the story, you know?
The most confusing one to me is when she's walking into the law office is the first time, because she starts her monologue while she's talking to the guy in front of her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, and then she turns around and speaks to the camera. But she starts talking at the guy.
Okay. Yeah, that was
doing her fourth wall breaking. It's like, is this why they hired me? And then she turns around and says the rest of it. It's like, wait, was that all supposed to be fourth wall?
I think it was, and I think to me again, the reason that one didn't confuse me is because it very obviously tells us that she is talking to us, and in universe, nobody sees her talking to a random fourth wall. So it
except the Hulk.
Well, again, that's why that's the one that's most confusing to me.
Right.
Is that he acknowledges her talking to someone else, but nobody else does. So all the other times, I was wrong in the fact that she's always alone, but the fact that when she is talking to the camera, it's never like nobody reacts to it. So to me, it always speaks to this is when she's talking to us and nobody else sees what's going on because she's just expressing herself to us. And I don't know, it hasn't bothered me. The acknowledging the A and B plot, like getting together. I did enjoy the like, I'm literally a different person, and she goes, haha. I liked that. I thought that was great. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. The ones that I haven't minded were the ones that are short, couple words and then back to the thing. But the ones that are longer are just taking me out, I think. I don't know. But anyways, sorry.
I liked the meaning behind the one where she was monologuing through that. And then the fact that because I think somebody else even mentioned that's going to come back. The idea of like that she doesn't know what she said she was agnostic to in that moment, and she's going to be worrying about the rest of the time. I get that there is a degree of like sometimes you say something at work without knowing what you've agreed to, and you would be like, I'm going to be worrying about that for the rest of the day or whatever. And then I have heard that's supposed to come back. The fact that she answered his question without knowing what he had said. So yeah, I don't know.
It's a silly show, and I hate that I have to watch it to see what they do.
But it's supposed to be a silly show, so for me, like it totally is fine.
But I hate that I hate that I have to watch it to see what they do with Daredevil.
I would even be really curious to see, because even if they do something with Daredevil in this one that you may not love, I wonder if they're going if they can do it in such a way that makes it so that they can still go into his show and make him still pretty consistent with how he had been, even though he is framed in a light that might be a bit more silly and goofy in this show. He can still be serious and not goofy in the other show. I'm hoping, and we'll see. But how he is portrayed in the show won't make me say, "Oh, they're going to ruin it in his own show." It'll
Charlie
be
Cox. Charlie Cox is so good in the role, and
he is so good.
Yeah,
I'm always surprised when I see him actually looking at people in the eye and using his eyes in like interviews and stuff. I'm like, what? Oh, you can see. That's right.
He's pretending to be blind.
That must be so hard to act blind and like not look at who you're talking to.
But he does such a good job because he's always looking in the direction, because he knows where everybody's at, but it's not his eyes that are supposed to look. And even blind people, I would imagine. I guess I'm not 100% sure on this, but like again, they still know the direction people are at, so they get the general direction, but they're not looking.
They're never looking at your eyes. Yeah, they're
it's like talking on a Zoom call where you're looking at a picture of the things instead of.
A lot of them wear glasses because people find it off-putting.
Yeah, they've already said it's going to be a reboot.
Which, if it's a soft reboot, like again, the third season of The Orville was like, it's not really a reboot, but they're kind of just they're taking it in a slightly different shift in direction, but they're going to say that everything that happened there was, but it's going to be different.
Speaking of The Orville, the Band of Brothers also has the redhead pilot.
From The Orville. Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Okay, because I love him in The Orville. He is so. I mean, obviously,
he's the best part of the show.
When we were talking about like good things happening and like well done stories, I had to stop myself from bringing up The Orville because I feel like I talk about it so much that I've been evangelizing it to so many people, and I've like ranted on here before about it. I'm like,
there is good stuff. There is good stuff out there, guys.
Yeah,
it's just not. It's not Rings of Power.
It's not here.
Okay, we got more. Marvel just accidentally admitted the problem with every new MCU hero. David, you sent me this one. I didn't read it.
Yes. Okay. So scroll down a little bit
in
because there's a
She-Hulk,
couple.
the MCU accidentally admits it has too many heroes who are not top tier like the Avengers, right? Because she's like, "Oh, I don't want to be part of the Avengers.
I'm not in the Avengers. Yeah.
The Avengers are
so.
dumb."
Yeah. So if you scroll down here, they say, right, She-Hulk doesn't need to be Avenger. Okay, keep going. Their whole. Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. So their whole thing about why Phase 4 is not good is because all the A-list, Avengers are kind of stepping down, or they're not part of the picture.
Or dead.
That may have something to do with it on a low level. But the main problem with Phase 4 is there's no connectivity to it. Nothing is adding. They're doing something over here. They're doing something over here, and nothing is affecting anything else.
They're pretending like there's going to be a tie-in, and then they explicitly ignore the thing it was supposed to tie into.
Yeah, so that's not the whole article was saying. Oh, its problem is because they don't have all these big names anymore. And we're dealing with Moon Knight and She-Hulk, and they're lesser known characters. You can make an awesome show with lesser known characters with good
Guardians
writing.
of the Galaxy.
Exactly, Guardians of the Galaxy was very niche. It was not as popular as it was. Like
no one knew who any of those characters were.
Exactly. Only like the
and
most
they were
introduced comic nerds.
They were all introduced in the same movie, and you liked all of them.
And it was just a bang smash hit because it was excellent writing and it was just flowed well together. And Marvel Phase 4 just doesn't have a rudder. They're just sailing direct to this, throwing spaghetti to the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah,
I think that there was stated.
I think that there was writing. I think there was already going to be a bit of this weakness in there, but I think that the pandemic added to the making it even more obvious and throwing more wrenches in their attempts at trying to have some kind of a plan, and the little bit that was there was just thrown off even more.
Did you guys know this though? Yeah. The Critical Drinker points this out, that She-Hulk was supposed to be released before Miss Marvel, and the first cut was so bad they had to do emergency reshoots. And what we're seeing now is the improved version of the show.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible.
It's just is every episode just going to be another case? Is that going to be the whole series?
I think so. Yeah.
It's possible, and that is one of the things. Is it is not. It hasn't done a very good job of telling us that hey, either we're going to have an overarching story or just a very serialized or week to week, just episode of the week, trial of the week sort of thing. So that's why I'm not saying like it's great, it's amazing or anything like that. There are definitely weaknesses in it, but
yeah.
It's just nothing really has mattered. It's just been a different case. For the only thread that has continued is Tatiana Maslany's superhero character that we don't like. What's even her thing? And why isn't she in jail? By the way, she broke into the courtroom. And
it shows a news report that somehow she got out, and it doesn't say how
she tried to kill the jury.
Yeah, a totally different case too. Not even her jury,
and it's explained away in the next episode that she was fleeing traffic court, so it wasn't even a good reason.
Yeah,
yeah. Anyways,
I don't have a defense for those things, but didn't bother me. I don't know.
And the plot of the episode was that she needed to prove that she was using She-Hulk. It was a copyright law episode. When the first episode or the second episode is the only reason she has a job is because she's She-Hulk.
Yeah.
And it takes her the entire episode to realize that she has to use her dating profile to prove it. Which was pulled off as like an aha moment, and all of us were saying,
"Yeah, duh."
Yeah,
and it was.
And she's supposed to come off as a smart person, but a baby watching the movie would be able to tell you how to solve the problem instantly, and she can't figure it out.
And I thought that they might make it more interesting if they've done it well, because again, absolutely very clunky, which is why I can't defend a lot of it. But I feel like I can see the seeds of what they wanted, because they even at the very beginning where she's working with Hulk, and she's saying like, "Oh, Smart Hulk. That's a little like, self-centered of you or whatever." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't give myself that name. They called me that." And she's like, "Well, you use it, therefore implied endorsement." And it's like, so
she does the same thing.
You could have used that a little bit more. It's an implied like if that was a thing that you pointed out there, that laid the groundwork that maybe that was your Chekhov's gun that you could use. Maybe, and they kind of got there because they kind of were like, yeah, see, she endorsed it by using it as She-Hulk on her date, but they didn't click that together. And again, we don't need them to like walk us through and tell us that we're doing a flashback because he's in a Bacta tank, but like give us a little bit better connections.
But you can tell that the writers have no idea how law works.
Right.
It's not the worst law show that I've.
They also don't know how comedy works.
So that's what's confusing me the most about the show, because I mean, granted, maybe I should have assumed that because it's called She-Hulk Attorney at Law, right? But
I mean, that's your mistake for assuming that it's going to be a lawyer show.
Yeah, they straight up admit that they wanted to make a legal drama, and they realized in the writers' room that we can't do this. We can't write. We suck at writing legal stuff, right? And so they decided to make this show instead. But this show has all just been legal drama. So, like, what are you pitching here?
And
I don't understand.
Because I haven't seen the actual interview, and I think maybe what they were thinking they were going to go for was we didn't know what we were doing, and hopefully they brought in some consultants to help them or to like pass over the stuff that they did. Which again, I don't think this has been the worst lawyering and like court presentations that I've seen in a lot of it, because a lot of shows will be even like a lot more callous with. My brother pointed out like you can't approach the bench without the bailiff tackling you, and they don't have people approach the bench without getting, but like, so they haven't fallen into that trope that a lot of other things do. So it's not the worst, but the lawyering, it doesn't lean on the lawyering, which maybe is again just them saying we're not great at this, so we're not going to lean into it. But yeah.
But then that's
so this is the quote here. I pulled up the quote. This was an interview. They were talking about being in the writers' room consulting with each other, and they said originally they wanted to develop the show as a legal procedural until in the writers' room they quote realized that none of us are adept at writing rousal trial scenes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why they don't have rousing trial scenes. Yeah,
I know, but that's what the show is.
That's the only thing that's in the show is trial scenes.
It's like you have a show, you have a plan, you want to do this.
Trial scenes and She-Hulk catfishing men.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And then getting upset, and then getting upset when they're put off by it.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to move on though.
Yeah, we're talking about She-Hulk more than
I know. This was supposed to.
In these,
we were supposed to talk about She-Hulk after the bad takes. Okay. Here we go. Darth Vader would have learned about Leia if not for 4 simple words. Not in the script. No, it's talking about some comic that just came out where that's how he finds out that he has a son, and it's silly. Moving on.
But he would have been no. There. That's the thing, is there is not a good explanation for how it is that Vader doesn't figure out that Leia, like, he can sense that Luke is his son pretty easily, but not that Leia. I don't know.
Well,
there's no good answer because Lucas didn't plan it out that way.
No,
we just kind of have to accept it.
Here we go. Why are humans in pods in the Matrix?
Watch the films.
Watch the movie.
Watch the movie. Or who is this article for again?
Yeah.
If you've watched the movie, you know. And if you haven't watched the movie, this is
it's going to spoil
massive
the movie.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. This is literally just, hey, this is the plot of The Matrix, the news article.
Yep.
I hate Screen Rant so much. So pointless. Will Margot Robbie play Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean 6?
I saw that article.
The fact that someone is asking this question without a hint of irony, goes to show what kind of clown world we are currently living in. That this could be a possibility.
Now, to be fair, they're not saying that she would play Jack Sparrow.
Yes, they are.
I read the article. They said that she would play in a pirate role akin to Jack Sparrow, a new.
They say replace Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow.
Or Jackie Sparrow.
Or Jackie Sparrow.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's a weird thing because I mean to maybe this is part of your point. I suppose it's possible that somebody would have done that, but I don't think like that's a terrible idea on every level, regardless of whether or not you think that she should be coming in to take over the position in the story, whatever. That would be a terrible idea from everybody's perspective.
Here's the thing. Here's the current state of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. I still haven't watched the newest movie with Javier Bardem, and Johnny Depp was in that one. If Johnny Depp isn't in Pirates of the Caribbean 6, I am definitely not going to watch it.
Yeah, he made the films.
Yeah, he did.
And the last one was absolutely ridiculously laughable.
The first was good. The second and third were Fourth was awful.
I actually liked the fourth one.
Fine.
I liked the fourth one fine. Weird. The fifth one was just laughably ridiculous. So like all the crazy physics stuff that they do. That's
Two and three are actually
like up to 25.
2 and 3 are better on a rewatch, like years later. I've enjoyed them better.
I enjoy a lot of things in them. Yeah, they're not nearly as good as the first one. The first one is primo.
The first one is perfection.
First one
absolutely
is
beautiful.
Absolutely perfect.
I think the two movies that I came out of thinking they were perfection was Pirates of the Caribbean and the first Avengers. Anyway, moving.
And the first Jurassic Park.
Ooh, Jurassic Park, baby. We got another one. Wheel of Time's Dragon Reborn reveal was disappointing if you've not read the books. It was also disappointing if you have read the books. You're a little bit late on this one, Screen Rant. Just a little bit, but I gotta say, it's a good take.
Screen Rants. Good takes?
Better late than never, right?
Hey.
Good job.
You can be right 1 in 1,000 times,
Yeah.
This is
Broken
almost
clock is right twice a day.
This is almost an entire year too.
Yeah. Wow, has it really been a year?
No, not quite. I mean,
it was November, right?
Yeah, November.
Yeah, okay.
So pretty close.
Pretty close, yep. Yeah.
Rings of Power and She-Hulk are woke, but these genre stories aren't new. Given recent criticism of She-Hulk, Attorney Law, and Rings of Power, some fans don't seem to realize that genre stories have always been woke.
Go back and read the original source material.
I think it depends a lot on how you want to define that, because these are taking some things to another level. But it's like saying, like, yeah, there's been strong female characters. Like, you look at Princess Leia in Star Wars. That's the idea of a quote unquote woke in the idea of having a strong female character is not new. It's been around for a long time.
Or
the way they're approaching
Alien.
it here, the way they're approaching it here,
it's just been done well in the past.
Yeah,
because they've told a good story that happens to have those things in there, as opposed to we need to find a way to present this thing, and the story will come second or actually seventh or ninth in our list of things that we're trying to do.
I hate that they blame it. It's because of a rise in toxicity in fandoms. No, it's because of a decline in quality of entertainment. You cannot look at She-Hulk and say that it's as good as I'm struggling to think of like a good, like, I'm trying to think of a more relevant comparison, like a comedy.
You say Deadpool?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a female lead though. I'm not trying to be ironic and imply that women aren't funny here. But it's night and day. Shoot, now I look bigoted.
There is something to the fact that maybe there's more of these stories that have the strong female lead or whatever, but again, they're not being done as well because it needs to be done more than it used to be. It was done occasionally; it wasn't done a lot, but when it was done, it was done well. And now they're trying to do it more, and they're not doing it well.
Well, I'll make the comparison then between the Galadriels, right? Like, one of them I like and one of them I don't, and it's not because they're women. It's because one of them is a portrayal of the character that I think is good and accurate and entertaining, and the other is a portrayal that I think is insufferable and not entertaining. But movies have always been woke. They've always been bad. Stop complaining. Consume product.
Yeah.
I think there was a point that Mark made earlier in the chat about if you just eat the crap that they give you, you'll never taste steak again.
Yeah.
And even though I do tend to agree with
you eat a lot of crap. You eat a lot of crap.
I will just take the crap and I will just find what I can love in it. He does have a point. Like I can say that
there's a nice little undigested piece of corn in this crap.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
Rings of Power in an age of epic fantasy on screen. In an age of epic fantasy on screen, many of the missteps are unforgivable. Yeah, it's a good take.
Missed a comment there, but so it took a little bit to understand what you're saying. But yeah,
Rings of Power in an age of epic fantasy on screen, many of the missteps are unforgivable. Right? That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be a comma.
Correct.
Or like a colon.
Or semicolon.
I feel like it's a semicolon here.
I don't know grammars.
Yeah, that's
I'm honestly not great about it.
But the thing, like, if this was the only thing that we had, we might like it.
Yeah.
But it's not. We have a direct comparison to House of the Dragon, which is doing the same thing when doing it better, even if you don't like the source material.
Yeah,
but the execution is leagues better.
I agree.
And I've been seeing more and more of these articles pop up now that they've been
confusing and troublesome narrative. Yep.
A visual headache. The editing specifically in episode 4 was pretty bad. They didn't like it. They dropped the one thing I liked about the show was the maps. And they dropped it.
Yeah.
Probably because they teleported back and forth about 6 times in this episode.
Yeah, you had to go back and
oh
forth
shoot!
so much,
No! Don't show the map! Don't show the map!
Well, even show it the one time so that you can see that this is taking time to do, and then make sure that you have other little cues and clues that this travel, this transport from this place to this place took some time. I know that it's got to be hard to try to tell this story where you need to have 2 things going on that it takes a long time, but you've got to do that. You can't just blow over that.
Yeah.
It feels weird, even if we have to sit there and say that had to have taken a long time. So I know that it feels weird because you're making it seem like it's happening like that.
What they should have done is they should have had Celebrimbor come and visit Khazad-dûm and speak to.
But also, they're implying that all the dwarves came to Illyrian to start building the forge,
building the tower. Yeah,
but then but they don't show any dwarves there. They show scaffolding.
Yeah,
and then they show all the other dwarves back in Khazad-dûm.
And again, the biggest thing for me is the fact that this is somehow the deal that they made because they've made a deal and have gone and started building the tower.
But I
even
thought
with
that
amazing workers, that would take some time.
I thought that they made the deal specifically with Durin. I thought Durin was the ambassador of the dwarves for this project, but he's back in Khazad-dûm, which doesn't make sense because Celebrimbor thought he was being dodgy. but he would never have interacted with him to have seen that.
Except that he must have gone back and forth. That's the thing, is I have to put together the fact that this must be months, if not a year later.
Except that his father, he had to get permission from his father to go there in the first place at the end of this episode. So he hasn't.
See, I've missed that part. So maybe there's parts that make it worse. But
you haven't.
It's just like
finished it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's just the comet ties everything together.
Again, it ties that one time period together. Until they get something else that specifically ties the rest of them all to having to now being at the same time there. That's the only other thing that I can do, because otherwise
I don't think they will.
You've suddenly made this happen in a matter of days. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah. Did you also notice how fancy the scaffolding was?
I didn't.
It was like intricate, like it was silly.
Hmm.
It was, okay.
That was their jail, by the way. Their jail had like these golden bars and stuff.
Oh, in Numenor?
Yeah.
The Rings of Power's Galadriel is the kind of flawed female hero more fantasy needs.
She is flawed.
You got
at least they admit that she's flawed. Yeah.
You got the first part right. You had us in the first half. But no.
Yeah.
We don't need more of this.
And I even feel like there's even some room for that in there, and because I recognize there's a narrative of the like, oh, when a woman is confrontational, it's a problem, but when a man's confrontational, it's powerful, or whatever. And I think that they could do that subtly. I think they could do that well.
If a man acted the way that Galadriel is acting in the show, he would be dead.
I agree with you. I'm saying that I recognize that. I think that's probably part of what a defense
trying to
what
do,
people
but they're not.
try to get to. But I don't think they're doing it well, because I do think that there is room for that story, but they're not doing it well. I don't think they're doing it well.
She should have been executed on the boat. She should have walked the plank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to have flaws in characters, but the characters need to admit their flaws and overcome their flaws. But
they need to learn to recognize their flaws.
Unfortunately, bro, you're right. There's no cause for her to recognize the ways that she's been wrong, because ultimately she's right. She's going about it in the wrong way. She's not being diplomatic. She's being angry and asinine to everybody and contrarian and just being antagonistic. But what happens at the end of this episode? She doesn't change at all, and the queen sides with her.
She also she pushes 5 guards into a jail cell.
Yeah.
Except if you watch it back, 2 of them just walk in by themselves.
Yeah. She overcomes
it's
3
ridiculous
guards in armor, and then all the while there's a guy with his sword half drawn and just lets her go.
Well, because what's his name told him like, oh, you don't want to let him go. But
what's also funny there is that Pharazôn is present and he's going to stop her, and Halbrand says no, because she's going to go talk to the king, and that will. For some reason, Halbrand already knows that Pharazôn wants to subvert the Queen Regent, and says, no, she's going to go talk to the king, and that will get you what you want. So don't stop her. Except that there are 5 guards present to witness Pharazôn's treason.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was kind of.
It's not going to be addressed.
What they were going for, but what I was going to say,
they're just going to gloss right over it.
What I was going to say with regards to oh shoot, there was something you were saying, David, and I had a point, but we can move on if we need to.
That he had his sword drawn and.
No, I think it had more to do with Galadriel and her stuff going on, but it was earlier.
Please, give us more Ripleys and give us more mothers from Raised by Wolves. Those are 2 examples from the same producer.
What was the first one you just said?
Ripley. Aliens.
Yeah.
Give us more. Give us more Xena warrior princesses. Okay?
I remember what my point was with regards to like they I don't know if they'll get there. I've been starting to wonder if they will with the way that she interacted with Halbrand, if they will start to try to get her to twist in the fact that nobody will go with her. But of course I haven't finished the episode, so if the queen ends up siding with her, that kind of ruins my like hope that maybe they finally figured out there's a way for them. But
bro, she
no,
gets
she just changed her
she
mind.
gets an entire army at the end of this episode because some leaves fell down. Yeah, give us more Sarah Connors.
Ooh, Evie from The Mummy, Martina. That's a good call.
Oh,
she's awesome.
She's
freaking awesome.
The fact that that her character holds a candle to Brendan Fraser's character, who is also freaking awesome, just goes to show how well she was written. That you have Brendan freaking Fraser, like the most liked human on earth, playing a sexy Indiana Jones, and her character is just as memorable as his.
Absolutely.
I am a librarian. That's such a good line.
Yeah.
Give us more of those and not more of these, please. Thank you. We got one more article. Oops. How accurate?
Yes.
This is from Collider. David, you sent me this.
Yes. So
I
dislike Collider.
Okay, let me read it. Let me read it, and then for the short. Okay. How accurate is the Rings of Power from a Tolkien book fan perspective? Question. It's really not a hard question to answer there.
I don't think so. No. So this is written by our friends at Collider, whom I despise these days. They used to be fantastic until they fired all of their best employees and canceled all their best shows. And now they just are a shadow of their former selves. But yeah, this whole article is saying how Tolkien would have hated Peter Jackson's interpretation because of some things
comments that his
wrote,
son made,
and mostly because the comments that his son made, that his son Christopher Tolkien doesn't like the adaptations. So that means that Tolkien himself wouldn't have liked them. But the Rings of Power just bring about this imagination that and bring his world to life, that he would have just loved to be alive when the Rings of Power.
And I can even understand criticisms of the Peter Jackson films. Like, yes, they focused more on the action than the books did,
and they made changes from some of the source material. That there were a handful of changes.
So I completely understand Christopher Tolkien thinking that the movies eviscerated his father's books.
But they went about it
the Rings
in
of
the
Power
original trilogy to serve and honor Tolkien and bring about his vision.
At least they tried.
Exactly.
Well, and
they did a
this thing
pretty damn good job.
This thing that Christopher is saying about the fact that they're making it into an action movie for young people aged 15 to 25, is that not what Amazon's doing with the Rings of Power? They're making it an action TV show for people 15 to 25. Like for today's people 15 to 25.
You say that, but where's the action?
Yeah, but again, to the point of they've changed Galadriel's character into more of a warrior than she would have been at this time, probably. To Liz's point, she did do some of that, but they really lean into that. So they're making one of his really interesting, cerebral political characters into an action star. I don't know. Again, whether they're doing it well, they're not making good action, but I think they're trying to do the same thing that Christopher is complaining about them doing in Peter Jackson's thing.
Well, it's really convenient. It's really convenient that the author is dead now, so they can say this kind of stuff. But here's one of their points, which is laughable. The Rings of Power is working with a smaller time frame. No. The Rings of Power is pretending it's a smaller time frame.
Unless you're talking about their shooting schedule time frame?
Thousands of years, guys. No, they're not.
Yeah.
So they're saying that they're collapsing the thousands of years into a smaller time frame.
Yeah. Which is
so
what happened with the movies too.
Yeah, they cut out the whole thing, the 15 years in the Shire.
Mm-hmm.
It's their points don't hold water. Gil-galad had, this one's valid though. Gil-galad had too much power and authority. It's worded wrong. They said he wouldn't have had the power to send people to Valinor. That's completely wrong. He wouldn't have had the power to prevent people from going to Valinor. That's how it should be worded. because it's a personal decision to say, "Hey, I'm going to go now. I'm done with Middle Earth."
Yeah.
So it's not that he wouldn't have had the power to send them; he wouldn't have had the power to not send. You get it. The show must make decisions for Tolkien. Yeah, sure, I get it. You got to fill in the gaps, but also don't erase the bullet points.
Yes.
Tolkien's character building and voice is difficult to mimic.
But that's your job as an adapter.
Yeah, and Peter Jackson tried. And it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between direct quotes from the book and dialogue written by the script writers. And in this, it's a rock looks down and a boat looks up. That's literally the only difference that I can think of for rocks and boats. The Rings of Power succeeds in capturing thematic elements of Tolkien's work. Sure. Good and evil, I guess.
This is something that it seems like Liz was really feeling like she felt they did really well. So
I'll give him that. It's not adapting the story of Tolkien's work. And yeah, okay, the CGI looks good. Numenor looks fantastic. Okay,
but so did the Peter Jackson films. They all look pretty friggin' awesome too.
Those are old movies, and they still hold up.
And that's the thing. It's the same old thing that we talked about in the Batman articles that we covered, right? Yeah. It's not enough to say, this new Batman movie came out and it was pretty good. It's, these other Batman movies that came before sucked, and they did this and this wrong, and this one's doing it better. It's not saying, okay, we actually like Rings of Power, and there's some things that they're doing good. It's like, no, Tolkien actually would have hated the original adaptation of the Lord of the Rings, but the Rings of Power is doing everything right. Yeah. It's just, come on.
It's insane.
How disrespectful you have to be.
Those are all the bad takes. There was a surprisingly good take, just a little bit late. To cleanse it off, we've got one more meme. I had a hard time choosing between my favorite meme of the week with the wood looks down. But here, might get in trouble for this one.
Oh no!
Yeah.
No comment.
It's so good. It's so good though. Okay. Also, go buy Shad Brooks's book.
Yes. So this is really good. Have you read the novel?
I have not read it yet. It's in my cart on Amazon, and
you can borrow my copy if you'd like.
I didn't borrow it, but I kind of want to get the new printing.
Yeah. Oh, so because they said the second edition fixes some stuff or whatever.
I kind of want to do this and get the book and the graphic novel second printing, and it's not a bad price.
Yeah. So it was a fun story. It was very Brandon Sanderson-esque. He took a lot of inspiration from Sanderson. But it was a really fun story, and this is the first. I think the first book is being split up into 4 graphic novels, and this is the first one. But it looks pretty good.
Yeah. I haven't read the story yet, but I've heard great things, and it just looks
pretty good.
Good, and
I
love everything that Shad does.
And the artist here, it shows some of his previous work. He worked on
Hedge Knight.
From Game of Thrones comic, prequel. And then the Injustice series. He's done art for that as well. So, yeah, it's really stunning art.
Really good art. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is from the actual graphic novel.
Mm-hmm.
These look cool.
It's going to be fun.
So it's kind of like I wouldn't say steampunk, but it's kind of like a futuristic kind of fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more like Renaissance
techno fantasy.
Yes,
that probably make more sense.
Yeah,
steampunk being more Victorian, whereas this seems more medieval.
Yeah,
technology. But
it's more medieval aesthetic. Renaissance. But yeah, they do have flying spaceships that run on these magical space stones.
He's got like some kind of laser.
Yeah,
gauntlet.
it's a skimmer gauntlet. So it's made. Well, I don't want to get into all the specifics, but there's really cool stuff with light stone and dark stone that have magical properties.
It reminds me a lot of a graphic novel that I had when I was younger. I think I still got it. That had floating cities, had a similar future technology, but still in a Renaissance-y type time period feel to it. The art looks really similar to me. It was called Meridian Flying Solo or something like that. I don't know. I just ended up with it, and I'm like, oh, this is an interesting thing. And then I've seen that there's a ton of other stuff. But
David, do you remember the Sojourn comics?
Yes, I do.
Those were fantastic. It's hard. I can't recommend it because it got canceled, and so the story's unfinished. But the artwork was beautiful, and the girls were hot. That's what I mean. Come on, that's why we got them from the library as kids.
Yes,
I was gonna say that was definitely not.
But also
part of the reasoning behind me reading that Meridian Flying Solo.
The story was really cool.
It was a really good story. So and good art. But yeah,
I think that's it. We ended up talking about She-Hulk during the bad takes.
Yeah, I don't really have anything more to say other than nothing's happening. It's just like, when is she? Like, there's got to be at least one episode where she fights a supervillain, right? Other than
I think because this one's going to be longer than the other series. I think it's going to be, is it 8 or 9 episodes?
I don't
definitely not just the 6 that the other ones are. So they've got a little bit more time to do stuff. It does seem it seems like Phase 4, where it's like it kind of thinks there might be some things to tie it together, but in the end it's still not quite tying together yet. Maybe they'll figure it out in the future, but
it's been 9 episodes.
I think Andor airs this week, right?
The 21st, 22nd. Yeah. I'm excited about that one. I mean, I understand, and I hope that they don't lean into it in a weird way with what you were saying about it being Trumpian.
They just said it. The showrunner said that's what they're doing.
What I think though,
they said the villain is Trump.
I think that different people's perspectives on, because to your point of Farazan or whatever being Trumpian, and then if it's only that bad, then I don't feel like, because that one didn't stand out.
I probably noticed these things more because I listened to the comments that the showrunners have made.
Yeah.
And so when I see it, it's more easily spot. But I thought that this episode was very obvious. Like,
I also pretty actively avoid politics because it's just so frustrating, and
they're taking our.
I don't love Trump, but I also don't love the some of the criticisms of him. But some of the criticism, like, those are 100%. He's a garbage person, but I just don't follow the politics because I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. All of it, both sides.
And even if you do follow politics, why would you want that in your entertainment?
Yeah. Yep. But I think if they make commentary on tyrannical leaders and tyrannical people and whatever, it's unfortunate that you've decided that you have to make that about that you're saying that's about Trump, because maybe he is that way, but just don't make it about a modern thing and just say, hey, they're bad people doing bad things, and you don't have to say this is because of Trump. It's fine, whatever. Trump was terrible, but just don't bring it into don't make that the thing that's, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. I'm excited because it looks pretty good. I liked the little preview that they had there. I'm a little off put by the fact that there's making it seem like he's being pulled into the rebellion at this point, where in Rogue One he says he's been in this fight since he was 6. And so I'm curious to see how they play with that, because obviously they can't be ignoring that, even if they ignore the fact that in the books it turns out he was raised as a separatist, which would be really kind of cool to explore that transition of separatist into rebel, because the separatists kind of did become the rebels.
So, but you want to know what's real funny though? They, it was supposed to release on the same week as Rings of Power initially, and they pushed it back probably so that it wouldn't interfere with Rings of Power and House of the Dragon. And and now they're releasing the first 3 episodes all at once. So it's like they didn't push it back.
Like partially, my understanding of that comes from the fact that I think they've said that their storytelling is done in 3 episode arcs. So
that's weak. That's just a when I don't like it when they do this. I think it's a telltale sign of a show not having confidence in their own series to be able to grip the audience with 1 episode.
Well, and maybe even in the fact that they're approaching it not as because I really do think that you look at Obi-Wan as a good example of that should have been a movie, but they decided to tell it as a story as a series, but it wasn't broken up and it wasn't a story that made sense as a series to be an episodic thing. But they tried to break it up into that.
But there's 12 episodes, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think there's more episodes of this than Boba Fett or Obi-Wan.
So they're doing the first arc all at once and then weekly.
I'll see how it goes. I'm still really excited. I'm the Star Wars apologist. I'm going to be gunning for what I can love about it. But yeah.
I'm with you there, Jared. I'm losing my faith in Marvel. I'm losing my enthusiasm for everything that's coming out. I'm not quite there yet on Star Wars. I still have hope.
I don't think I've liked a single Marvel movie since Endgame, and Endgame wasn't even that great.
I really liked Shang-Chi.
I haven't seen Shang-Chi yet.
I liked the first half. I thought it started off really good, and then it was more fun when it was a martial arts movie. Like the bus fight scene is honestly fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And then it quickly moves away from that into just silly.
Yeah, I accept that. It's kind of a part of the Marvel thing. You're going to have the big bad battle at the end. But it still felt because you get to explore a little bit of lore, and I don't know. I liked that one a lot. Black Widow was fine, but it came out they made it felt like it was.
I haven't
they
even
made
seen
it because
that one
they felt like they had to make it. But if they'd actually made it when they should have made it, I think it would have been good. But they made it because they had to make, and they did need to make it in a lot of ways, kind of. But it just felt like, we have to make this, so we're going to make something. So,
but
it was okay.
When I haven't even seen it yet, Black Widow.
Yeah.
I just realized I have yet to watch that one.
Yeah. Eternals had some interesting concepts, but I don't think it was presented very well, and I don't love the way it didn't. I didn't feel good coming out of it, even though I like.
I think it had an interesting premise, and the execution was very poor, and the ending was just
No Way Home. That's one that's come out since Endgame.
Yeah, I don't count that one as a Marvel movie, though. It's Sony.
Yeah, that's No Way Home is the only one that's been fantastic.
I really don't. And if you think about it, the plot is pretty bad, but it's good because of the performances.
Mm-hmm.
The plot is stupid, though.
The inciting incident
I really do enjoy No Way Home, but it's pretty dumb.
Beyond the inciting incident, I don't hate it, but the inciting incident's kind of okay.
But also, even then, though, the solution is, hey, let me take all of these villains into my house instead of doing it one at a time, maybe.
Yeah. Or and
it's pretty convenient that he solves all of their problems in one night.
Yeah. Well, they also
twice. He does it twice.
It is they play around with the fact that he's a little naive and feeling like he's got to try to save all these people, but in the end, Doctor Strange is still kind of right that it's we don't know what's going to happen here, except for the fact that this is really dangerous for the universe and the multiverse in general. So as iffy and icky as it seems, there is a greater need. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few kind of thing going on here that they can play with the fact that he's a naive kid that doesn't grasp that or doesn't fit that, but they don't really dive into that fact of it, You have to fill that in later on. But it was still fun. I loved seeing the old Spider-Man back, and their interactions between the three of them were just golden.
Yeah, the high points of the movie was just them talking, and then when it got to the action, it was quite bland.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah,
I loved it, but It's still not that great, and it's not a Marvel movie.
Not as good as Into the Spider-Verse. Into the Spider-Verse now. That was a beautiful Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, looking forward to the sequel.
Yeah.
So Marvel's dead to me. Star Wars is dead to me.
I'm no quitter.
Game of Thrones was dead to me, but it's kind of bringing me back. I don't know. They could still totally screw up the ending. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've been wrong, but I'm frequently not wrong. But I don't know. I might still end up being right. Go watch Band of Brothers. It's real good. It's very sad.
I have been interested because I've only ever heard good things about it. And as I was saying, just my love and respect for the military, and in spite of the fact that the war is ugly and awful, and then finding out that Gordon Malloy's character, the actor, is in there, makes me want to see it even more because he's just so good in the Orville.
And here's a teaser for next week. I'm going to recommend a very controversial film that was universally panned by critics, and the critics got it wrong. This movie's phenomenal, and I'll tell you about it next week.
Interesting. I may or may not be here next week.
Okay. You know what the movie is. But
Nuevo Mexico. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll text you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out.
I love it. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time. So we'll see you next week. We talk about Rings of Power and probably She-Hulk still, and maybe Andor. I'm pretty sure Andor.
I think you're right.
Also,
yeah. I think it's Wednesday or something.
Jared Prime might be coming back. We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dressed in She-Hulk garb.
You are.
Yeah.
With your green.
You got the purple and green, bro.
The purple going on.
That's the thing. I like the She-Hulk comics. They're real good. So you think you got a zinger, but you don't. I like She-Hulk.
Well, that's also
like the show.
Hulk's colors too, because it's straight up just the same.
That's true.
This is more of like a maroon, though. It's coming off as purple in the camera because of the green, but this is red. This is maroon, guys.
Are you sure it's not
Sorry.
chartreuse or? I don't know different colors for red and purple.
It's come through the camera straight purple.
Yeah, it's coming through straight purple.
Well, see, look at the back of it, though. See the shoulders where it's not getting reflected from the
Where
green
you get
light?
your rim light. Yeah, it looks more red.
Yeah. So here, let's turn it up.
A little bit.
It's red.
Oh, there you go.
It's red,
wow.
boys.
I'm still seeing a lot of purple, but that also might be just my screen.
Your
now it's
wedding
just
colors
pink.
were purple and green?
They were, yeah. Dark purple, dark green.
I feel like I've seen your wedding photos.
I am so glad that I was not there.
I feel like I've seen your guys' pictures from your wedding, and I feel like it worked really well from what I've seen of the wedding pictures. But looking at it in that context of like the lots of big purple and lots of big green, that would have been a weird choice. Ooh, that's a choice.
I was in Mexico, baby. We'll see you next week. Bye.